Good morning. I'm Teresa Furr, Director of the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm thrilled to welcome you. Can you believe it? 20 years, 20th annual Keeping the Farm Workshop. We've been doing this. So glad that you've joined us in person, and I'm hoping that we've got a lot of people joining us online, live streaming this morning as well. We do have breakfast in the back, different varieties based on your dietary needs. We'll have a break this morning as well if you haven't taken advantage of that. I want to give a great thank you to Triangle Land Conservancy. I know they've got over here, a table over here this morning, our Wake Soil and Water Board of Supervisors, and of course, our friends of the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District. That's our nonprofit that works on behalf of the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District for their generous contributions and donations for the breakfast and snacks this morning. We want to thank our Wake County Commissioners, our Wake Soil and Water elected Board of Supervisors, and our conservation partners who are here this morning. County Commissioners-wise, I know we have Vice Chair Commissioner Don Mile. He will be giving our welcome remarks in a second. And I don't think we see any other commissioners. If I missed you, please raise your hand, but I've been trying to keep an eye out for you. I know they're busy, and as Commissioner Miles said, he's got a lot of things to do today, too, so this is a busy season for them. As far as our other elected officials that we have here, I've seen a couple of our Soil and Water Board of Supervisors. Reese Wamsley, he's in the back there, raising his hand. So Thomas Dean, Supervisor, he's here. And anybody else that I missed? That's one of our two of our elected Board of Supervisors here this morning. We also have our Agriculture Advisory Board members, Talmadge Brown. Talmadge, there he is. Let me see who else. Is David Kennedy here? There's David. Glad to hear David. Patrick Johnson, our chair. He's not here yet. And Brittany Marshman, she was on her way, but I don't know if she's made it yet. There she is in the back. Thank you for being here, Brittany. And I know our vice chair is probably listening to us online as well. So I'm glad that she's able to at least join us online. County Manager's Office, they should be, I don't think they're here yet, but I know Ashley Jacobs, our Deputy County Manager, is going to be here today as well, so we thank them. Our sponsors, Triangle Land Conservancy, again, big sponsor, Agri Supply in Garner. Our Wake County Farm Bureau, Amanda, raise your hand back there. Ag Carolina Credit is over here. They're probably in line for breakfast. And also our friends of the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District. We have a number of vendors here this morning, and I'm excited about them being here, and I want to recognize them. We have our local North Carolina Forest Service back in the right corner here. We have Annie Kittle. She is the Assistant County Ranger. And we have Wren Gershom. She is our service forester covering Wake, Granville, and Vance counties. So this is your local folks with the Forest Service. We're going to have a presentation today about forest management plans because I saw a need for that this year doing a lot of site visits. And a lot of people are forgetting about having those plans and having those their timberland and management plans done. So we've got them here and folks to talk about that. Again, we have Wake County Farm Bureau. We have the NC Wildlife Resource Commission. Thank you for being here, Jamie. We have Land Loss Prevention Project. Annette will speak to us this morning. They're here. We have our Wake County Housing Affordability here. Thank y'all for being here. They're up in this corner. Trying to make sure I missed anybody here. I think I got everybody on that page. Planning Department is here as well. They're outside. Wake County Cooperative Extension, our USDA Farm Service Agency, our USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, our federal partners, and our friends, and we have our table outside as well. So I'm asking you to be sure to stop by at the break. We're going to give you an extra little bit longer break today to stop by, to see them, to talk with them, to ask them questions during break and lunch. Housekeeping as well. Bathrooms are located just outside these doors on your left. So let you know where that's at. So I got a surprise for y'all today. We have just launched our farmland preservation plan in Wake County. We are working with Equinox, our contractor, to get our plan together. We will have this, hopefully this plan completed by the end of this year and hopefully adopted by our Wake County Board of Commissioners. In your survey packets that you have a yellow piece of paper that looks like this. This is the Farmland Preservation Plan survey for Wake County farm and forest landowners. It's very, very important. I cannot stress to you enough how important it is for you to fill out this survey and give this back to us today. We're going to have staff walking around collecting those, and soil and water staff. Raise your hand if you were soil and water staff. Can you raise your hand? Okay, you see them? They're going to be walking around talking to you, making sure you found your survey, number one, your yellow piece of paper, and that you get it filled out. We have boxes located outside labeled for this survey. There will be another survey a little bit later with One Water that we'll go over a little bit later, but this yellow piece of paper, Farmland Preservation Survey, very important to get this back to us. It's going to help us direct us on what we need to do in putting together this plan, okay? All right, I know you are excited, right? All right, so we have an all-star lineup for you today. This is our version of March Madness. I know those brackets just came out, but this is the best bracket that you can have right now. Incredible team of experts this morning providing updates and insights on how to keep your farm and forest land in the family for generations to come. It's becoming harder and harder. I'm hearing from a lot of you the pressures and the challenges that you're facing to keep this land. After each presentation this morning, there will be time enough to have questions answered, and then most of them will be here throughout the day. If you don't feel comfortable asking questions in this setting, please go up to them and talk to them individually and get your questions answered. That's why we want you here today, to get your questions answered and to have a chance to speak to these resource professionals. If you do have a question, raise your hand. Our staff member will bring the microphone to you, and we will let you ask your question. This workshop is being live streamed and recorded, and to make sure everyone can hear and participate in this workshop. All presentations will be available on our Wake County Soil and Water website for viewing at a later time. So if you have friends and families that can't make it this morning, they can still re-watch these videos at a later date. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that this information is very helpful to you. So let's get started. Kicking off our agenda, we have welcome remarks from our Vice Chair, Don Mile, Wake County Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Mile is a dedicated advocate for preserving Wake County's farm and forest. With firsthand experience, I'm sure he will tell you about, of working on the farm, he deeply understands the county's agricultural history and the vital role that strong and thriving family farms and forest lands play in our community, in our county. So, Commissioner Mile, please come on up.
Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. As I was speaking to some of you when I was coming in, isn't it a great day? It's not raining. Even though it may be a little cool, but the great thing is that being an old farmer and having grew up out in the Shotwell area, you know that it's just another day. You get up and you keep it moving. So as indicated, and thank you, Teresa, for the great introduction, I am Don Mile, the Vice Chair of the Wake County Board of Commissioners. You know, an early start usually makes for a productive day, so I'm glad that we are here early this morning. I know I'm in a room full of farmers, so for you, it's probably isn't that early. You know, I remember as a kid growing up on the farm, you know, my dad and grandfather, they would be out before the sun even came up. You know, back during that time, you know, when you had to bring the tobacco in, you had the barn going, you know, you had to stay up pretty much all night to keep that thing going and make sure to maintain the temperature so to cure that tobacco. So, in fact, some of you may have used today as an opportunity to sleep in, because I'm sure many of you would have been up long before now and out doing all those wonderful things on your farm. So I hope you're well rested, because our soil and water conservation team has a jam-packed day for you. As Teresa indicated, you got different groups here And I see our registered deed just came in. Good morning, Tammy. Oh, you always on time. So there are a lot of learning to do. So I promise I won't be up here too long. As I indicated, I was born and raised on a farm about 15 minutes down the road in the Shotwell area. My family grew tobacco and cotton. And I remember driving a mule to bring the crops into the barn. You know, back during that time, you know, we had the old slide truck, as we referred to. And my brother and I, you know, worked we weren't old enough to prime the tobacco, but, you know, growing up on the farm, everybody worked. There was no such thing that you were going to sit around the house and you were not going to be doing anything. So I could just barely see over to the tobacco because it'd be heaped up so high in the slide there. But, you know, we were still working. We bring the tobacco into the barn, and, of course, my mom, grandmother, and aunts and everybody, and they would tie the tobacco onto the tobacco sticks. So, as I indicate, we were sharecroppers. So my family didn't own the land, but we worked it hard. And as I indicate, you know, driving that old slide, we had an old mule called Kate. And I think everybody had a mule that probably gave it some kind of name, and she was called Kate. But because of generations of my family worked on that farm, it instilled a sense of pride and ownership in us. Later on, that land got split up and some of it was redeveloped. Now houses on Mile Plantation Road go for almost $400,000 to $500,000 in that same area. Some of you already know my story, so you know I'm not just blowing smoke to you this morning. I know what it takes to keep a farm running. I know the value of maintaining your land and your legacy. Today marks Wake County's 20th Keeping the Farm Workshop. And I think that's worth celebrating. So you need to give yourself a hand, you know, because this is awesome that Teresa and her crew have been able to keep this going. You know, it's no secret that Wake County is growing. Our most recent census report shows that we are growing. As I was telling someone earlier, we've been saying 51 people per day for the last couple of years. Well, we got some data the other day. It's changed. We are now growing by 66 people per day. Wake County, we're roughly around 1.24 million people here in Wake County. We are the largest county in North Carolina, and we are still growing. That's like adding a new Wendell and a new Roseville each year. More residents mean more mouths to feed, which is a win for you as farmers. But two things can be true. Growth means we are also seeing more development, which can be detrimental to farmers. The good news is that Wake County is working to stay ahead of that curve. We still have over 62,000 acres of farmland in active production. People want to live here because we have a great balance of urban and rural areas, and we intend to keep it that way. As I've heard when I'm moving around, you know, people used to call North Carolina a flyover state because they were flying over North Carolina going to somewhere else. Well, they're not doing that now. People are staying when they come in and they see the great thing that we have here, so they are staying. Wake County has a goal to protect 1,000 acres of green space over the next 4 years. That include parks, greenways, farmland, and forests. I'm proud to say that our board has approved over $11 million for agriculture conservation easement in the past 3 years. We've also secured permanent protection for nearly 200 acres of prime agricultural farmland, and we're still running towards our goal. Our soil and water conservation team is working on 15 applications right now. Expect to see some exciting announcement in the coming months. Again, Teresa and her crew just keep doing wonderful things, you know, with trying to preserve and farmers. So that's the reason why we are having this great meeting today and seeing all the great farmers, you guys coming in. Because Teresa and her crew are definitely putting in a lot of hard work trying to do everything they can to help you preserve your farmland. So use today to learn how to protect your legacy, not just for development, but also from unpredictable weather and financial stress. You owe it to yourself and your labor. And most importantly, you owe it to generations before and after you. I said I wasn't going to stay up here too long, so I'll leave you with this. When you think about your farm or forest, what do you see? Crops, trees, animals, maybe some expensive equipment. And when I think about expensive equipment, I always like to tell this story as a kid growing up. You know, we've been having that old mule where we finally got a tractor. And of course, my grandfather and dad told my brother, who's a couple years older than I, to stay off of it. But, you know, hard-headed kids, you know, we got to mess with it. Well, of course, what my brother ended up doing, out there messing with the tractor, didn't know what he was doing and ran it straight into the barn. And what he ended up doing was bending the tie rod. So I told him, I said, oh, Lord, boy, you dead meat. But, of course, they was able to repair it. I was heating it up, so he survived. But the good thing is you learn from those things. Those are the things that we experience living on a farm. You know, walking down through the woods, you know, picking blackberries, going fishing at old creek down behind the house there, whatever the case. These are things that I remember as a kid. So, but I bet you all see your blood, sweat, and tears, as I indicated, from what you do and the hard work that you do every day while working on your farm. So you see morning sunrises over your hard work, and maybe your parents or grandparents had hard work too. You picture your kids running around in the grass and learning the value of honest work. You see a way to feed your family and your neighbor's family, a way to contribute to your community and pass something down to your grandkids. Honor that, protect that. And lastly, I am you, you are we, and we are Wake County. Thank you.
All right, we're getting ready to get the most important people up here. I'll say this before introducing them, and hopefully everybody can hear me in the back okay? Y'all good back there? And I'll say this because I've been here 20 years working in Wake County, working with farm and forest landowners. The quickest way that you can lose your farm and forest, y'all know what it is? By losing present use value. You will lose it. So I've seen it, and it's the most important thing that we're going to talk about this morning. It's very complicated for a lot of people to understand. And so we have three experts. I said two experts for the price of one. We have three. Only two are going to be presenting, but we have three that can help answer your questions and keep you from making a big mistake with those rollbacks, okay? Joining us today, we have Deputy Tax Administrator Nicole Kreiser and Appraisal Manager Braxton Williford to share their knowledge on the Present Use Value Program, get your questions answered, what qualifies, what doesn't, how you can lose it, and also providing other tax updates for us this morning. So thank y'all for being here.
Good morning. I'm Nicole Kreiser. I'm the Deputy Tax Administrator for Wake County. And as Teresa said, we're here to share some very important information and understand that we're going to be here today. So if you want to come up to us after our presentation, ask questions, get clarification, we're really here for you guys. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit about an update with tax administration. And then Braxton's going to discuss properties and present use value, how we determine that value, what are the requirements, and how to apply. And I'll say that Vice Chair Mile teed me up pretty well this morning. We've grown since 2015 the equivalent of an Alamance County. So if you look at all of the people moving here, that's also new parcels being created. That's open space, that's farm, that's forestry, that then is being subdivided and new parcels are being created. All those people that come here, they're buying homes, and those homes are on the land. We want to make sure for those who do not want to sell their farm, you guys can continue being in that PUV program, because there's others who are, and then this is what happens, is we get those extra parcels that are created. Most of that growth has been in the towns. So if you look at the number of parcels that have been created over the past 10 years, you're going to see that 5% is in that unincorporated area, and the vast majority is in the municipalities. So if you see that you have, it's Wendell, it's Zebulon, it's Fuquay-Varina, the percents, when you don't have a lot of parcels and then you add a fair number of parcels, you have some significant growth. And you guys have all seen that in the areas of Wake County that are growing and developing, and seeing the homes that were never there 5-10 years ago. Last year when I was here, we had just finished our 2024 revaluation, where property values by law are updated to reflect market value. As a whole, the county grew 51%. That was 53% residential in value, 45% in commercial. And we have our tax base is 70% residential, 30% commercial. Of that tax base, we defer $3.2 billion of value in the present use program, and that is an equivalent of $16.4 million of property tax that is deferred. And so the importance of those who want to maintain PUV is having those values, those bills deferred. Now, I will say the present use value in the program, it's all by state law. So the requirements, the acreage, the things that Braxton's going to talk to you about, we're not making that up on our own. Those are all prescribed by the state statutes, as well as what happens if you need to end up having that rollback. Our office is adhering to what North Carolina says for administering this program. So we just are about wrapping up our appeals for that 2024 revaluation. And every tax owner, property owner had the right to submit an appeal related to their new assessed values. I will say we have 430,000 plus parcels in Wake County, and the percentage of property owners who appealed their value is pretty low compared to the overall amount of parcels we have. For the informal review process, we received 3.7% of total parcels appealed their value. And then for the formal, 2.1% appealed their value. The market is still growing. Since January 1, 2024, we're still seeing about a 5% increase in the market, which then goes to, for those who want to maintain present use value, you're going to see pressures because there's always market increase. And so that's what we've seen over the past year. So that's my update with tax administration. I'm now going to share, Braxton's going to talk about the program requirements and some other items related to the program.
Good morning. Well, after hearing Nicole talk about the increase in the valuation in the county, I'm not sure anybody ever imagined they would have values that we're seeing right now with their land. That it's just amazing. The Prison Use Value Program was actually started back in 1974 by the General Assembly, and I truly believe the core of the program was enacted for areas like Wake County where the market value is just so high, and there's really no way to maintain a farm and hold land without being in the program, like Teresa just said. I mean, it's getting to the point where it's you almost have to have it. So the first few slides, we're going to do a 10-year look back. We're going to talk about some of the statistical changes, how much acreage has come out of the program, how many parcels have come out of the program. And then we're just going to do a little bit of a review. If some of you have been here before, none of the statutes have changed, but if somebody's new, hopefully they'll learn a little bit about the program. This is probably one of my favorite slides we do every year. Again, we're 10-year look back. The left side is 2015, the right side is 2025. Nicole talked about all the new parcels, and this map kind of coincides with what she did. You can see how much more orange is on the left side versus the right side. That's 2015, this is 2025. Look at how much orange is disappearing in Fuquay and Rollsville and Wake Forest. That's where all the farms have come out of the program. That's where all the developments are popping up. It's just amazing how much growth we've seen over the last 10 years. So how many properties actually have come out? So from 2015 to 2025, roughly about 700 parcels have come out of the PV program. I was talking to Teresa before the program started, and I asked her, how many acres do you think have come out? I thought she was going to be shocked by 10,000. 10,000 seems like a lot to me. She thought it would be even more. So I guess she's doing a good job with her outreach to try to keep growing the program and getting new people involved. So to me, that's a pretty big number, 10,000 acres. That's a big chunk. So who actually comes up with the use value values? Use value is what you pay your taxes on when you're in the program. It's the really low value that you see compared to the market value. Use value rates have nothing to do with the revaluation, have nothing to do with the market value at all. They're comprised by soil types and by how much the acreage is renting for throughout the state. So these use value rates can vary depending on the quality of the soils throughout the state. We're going to touch on the core requirements of use value. The big three are size, ownership, and income. Again, this is going to be a little bit of a refresher for some of you. We're also going to talk about how you can apply our yearly compliance review that we have to do by statute, and then if we do have to collect the deferred taxes, how do we do that? So we'll start off with the minimum size requirements. So the three classifications, agriculture, horticulture, and forestry. Agriculture, you had to have 10 minimum acres in production. Horticulture, 5 minimum acres, and forestry, 20 minimum acres. And if you're trying to get into the program, you have to maintain those acreages in production for 3 years prior to the January that you want to get in. So you probably hear the term qualifying tract. What exactly is that qualifying tract? So a qualifying tract can be one tract or it can be multiple tracts, but they have to make up those core minimum requirements of the size, acreage, and income. If it is multiple tracts, they have to be contiguous. In other words, they can be different tax parcels, but they all have to be touching, and they all have to be in the exact same ownership. We do allow you to use any land under your farm outbuildings to go towards your acreage in production, that minimum acreage in production. We can never use any home sites. If you have a dwelling on the property, we will always have to build 1 acre. 1 acre at market value. We talked about the non-contiguous parcels a little bit before. So what if you have a qualifying tract, but then you have other smaller tracts throughout the county? Once you have that qualifying tract, you can pull in parcels that would not qualify on their own with that already qualifying tract. We call that an expansion of the existing unit. You can actually use a qualifying tract in another county to pull your smaller tract in Wake County, as long as it's within 50 miles as the crow flies, so to speak. So what are the ownership requirements? For properties that are not currently in present use value, and this goes for individual and for business entities as well, you have to own the property in that exact ownership for 4 full years prior to the January that you want to apply. So there is an exception. If you wanted to buy a property that's already in present use value, the statute does allow for you to do a continued use application on that, as long as you do it within the 60 days of the date of the deed. And as long as you keep that exact classification. Like if it's ag, you got to keep ag throughout that rollover process. You heard me kind of explain a qualifying tract a little bit before. From an ownership perspective, the main takeaway about that is all those parcels must be in the exact same ownership. We do see a lot of people converting their ownership to an LLC for liability purposes, for estate planning purposes. That is considered a different ownership on paper, even though it might be you who created that LLC or the trust or the corporation. On paper and legally, it is a different ownership. You have probably heard me say this before if you were here in the last few years. Once a deed is recorded, it cannot be undone. There's no going back. So that's why I always say, if you're going to record something, just give me a call, give Chuck a call. We'll be happy to sit down with you and lay out your maps and look at what you're thinking about doing, just to make sure it doesn't, cause you to be removed from the program without wanting to be removed from the program. And if you are thinking about coming up with an LLC, make sure that you get your attorney to specify that the primary business entity is going to be related to either agriculture, horticulture, or forestry, or whatever you're thinking about applying for. No real change here. The income requirements have been the same for years and years. For agriculture and horticulture, you have to average 1,000 gross from the sale of the animals or the crops over a 3-year period. Forestry, there's no income requirement just because of the long-term nature of growing trees. Although it wouldn't make you submit a forestry management plan. I think Teresa was talking about a forestry management plan earlier. You can do your own plan, but like Teresa said, we would recommend you work with the Forest Service or the private foresters to make sure you get a sufficient plan just to maximize the growth of your forest land. So what exactly is agriculture? Agriculture, in my terms, are field crops, row crops. They're like your corn, your soybeans, your tobacco, stuff like that. And horticulture, it's a minimum of 5, so you don't have to have as much, but it's strictly, you can only do horticulture type products, so you can't use agriculture products to qualify for horticulture. Horticulture is more of your vegetable farming, I would call truck farming, and nursery type products. There are a few products that can go either way, but it is kind of on a case-by-case basis. If you think you might want to try to grow something, get up with Chuck. He's pretty much an expert on what you can and can't grow. What kind of income are we looking for? We're looking for the actual sale of the crop or the animals. And a lot of people get confused. They think we are looking for what they rent the farm for. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the actual income from the sale of your livestock or your crops. If you happen to get one of our yearly present use value questionnaires, you may end up having to get some information from the farmer because we are looking for what they're actually selling the crop for. So how can you apply and when can you apply for PUV? If the property has never been in PUV, the month of January is when you can apply. And we do allow you to apply after January 31st, but you would have to submit a statement of good cause as to why you're applying after January 31st. And all these have to go before the Wake County Board of Commissioners, and they would have to make a determination on whether that good cause meets merit or not. And if they do, then they can make a call on whether the application qualifies or not. I talked about the continued use applications a little bit before. This is when you want to buy a property that's already in PUV, or either you want to convert a property that you own in your own name to a business entity like an LLC or a trust. That would require one of those continued use applications to be filed with us. And statute does say that you have to do that within 60 days of the deed. And by chance you get that to us after the 60 days, we will accept it, but we must, it is considered a late file application, and the good cause as to why you're late would have to be submitted with that as well. And those go to the Board of Commissioners as well, and if they deemed that your good cause is valid, then they can make a determination on whether the application qualifies or not. So what is good cause? So good cause is basically, it has to be a valid reason as to why we should accept the application after January 31st. Typically, they're looking for like a medical issue, unfortunately like a death in the family, something like that. Usually you forgot or I just didn't know. Unfortunately, it doesn't usually cut it. So it has to be a valid reason for the board to really consider it. So what should you do if you're thinking about buying a property that's already in PUV and you want to maintain the use? Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure that the attorneys involved and any real estate agents know that you want to keep the use, and reach out to me or Chuck and make sure you get that continued use application, because I've seen multiple times where the buyer and the seller's attorney weren't on the same page. First thing that the one of the attorney paralegals is going to do, they're going to contact our office, hey, I got some deferred taxes on this property. And our appraiser is going to give them an estimate of the deferred taxes. The day of closing, paralegal is going to come in with a check to pay those rollback taxes. Somebody's going to sign that, sign the papers, and in a few days they're going to realize that they're out of the program. Those deferred taxes were paid by the paralegal a few days ago. And if they don't have another property in present use value, they got to wait 4 years to get back in the program. So make sure your attorney knows that you don't want to be coming out of the program, because once those deferred taxes are paid, the check shows up at our office, no going back. I talked about our compliance reviews a little bit before. How many of you received anything from us this past year as far as filling out the one person? Really? 2 people? 3 people? Okay. Was it pretty easy to fill out? All right. So North Carolina general statutes require that we do this. We review 1/8 of the properties. Well, actually, we have to review all of them once every 8 years, but we do 1/8 every year. So that basically equates to 377 reviews last year. And of those 377, 95% of them were perfectly fine. And we only had to remove 5% or 18 total from the program. 10 of those just never sent the form back in. Like Teresa said, sometimes you got to help yourself a little bit. And we actually did our best to do some outreach. I know Chuck and I spent several days calling people, trying to get up with people. He emailed people. We actually sent a second round of notices, 59 of them that didn't send the first one back in. So if you get something from us, just even if you don't know what it is, call us and say, hey, do I need to send this back in? Yeah, you need to send it back in. It's state law. And if we don't get it back, we assume that you don't qualify anymore, and we're going to remove you from the program. We don't want to remove you from the program, but like Nicole said, it's a state law. We don't have a choice. So how do we calculate the deferred taxes? You know, and some people want the taxes. Some people want to be removed from the program if it's being sold or for whatever reason. So the deferred taxes is basically a recapture of the difference between the market value and the use value. And what we collect is called the deferred. So state law requires us to collect the current year plus those 3 back years. And in some cases, you might get 3 bills. In some cases, you might get 4 bills. It depends on when the disqualifying event occurs. If it's in the beginning of the year from January 1 to the end of June, the current year hasn't been billed yet, so you would only get 3 rollback bills, but that current year is billed at the full market value. If the disqualifying event happens in the latter part of the year, say after July 1 to the end of December, then that current year has already been billed. Those rollback taxes are out there, so you'll actually get 4 rollback bills. Essentially, you're paying the same thing. It's whether you're paying full market on that current year or not. So just some people just get a little confused. Why do I get 4 bills? Why do I only get 3 bills? DOT. Oh goodness. Has anybody seen any road construction going on lately? All right. Unfortunately, sometimes they do take properties that are involved that are enrolled in the program. This does take a while. There's a lot of back and forth between the landowner and DOT. And I've seen some cases that it takes years to finally get the final deed recorded. For that reason, we can't actually remove the parcel lines or update ownership until that final deed is recorded. But we do realize that DOT has quick take authority, so as soon as they do the taking, they technically own the property. So sometimes there is a little bit of a area of limbo there between when they take it and when the final deed is recorded. If you're involved with the DOT taking, let us know, and we can proactively try to find the memorandum of action and go ahead and at least address those tax bills, because you don't own the property, so you shouldn't pay the tax bill. DOT is exempt. They're not going to pay the tax bill. So it will, if anything, it'll just ease our collection people a little bit from trying to collect on taxes that they're not going to get anyway. So just keep that in mind if you happen to be involved with a taking. One good thing is, if DOT does take your property, by state law, they have to reimburse you for any rollback taxes that you paid. I've mentioned a couple of times we're here to help you as much as we can, because this is a very important program. Feel free to give us a call, and if even you want to meet with us and discuss anything and have maps or anything, we actually can meet with you right here on site. We have the ability to use the lower level. So we've actually met with a few people and looked at what they're thinking about, how they're thinking about dividing up their property, just to make sure that they can continue in the program. And this is some of our information. Again, that's Nicole, myself, Braxton, and Chuck. And I appreciate it.
Okay. He said I had a hard time hearing in the back, so we're going to try to talk into this a little bit more. So we got a few minutes, and I know this is very important, so we got some mic runners. Is there any questions now from the tax office with this? So about anything? They covered a lot in a short period of time, so any questions right now for them? Yes, I see. Okay. We'll bring you a mic so they can hear you. Y'all have a mic, don't you? Okay.
I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you have a farm that has been divided because of a death, deed, and it was farmland, and you said if it's contiguous, is there a possibility if they are different landowners, can it be considered one farm? And the land that does not qualify for farm use because it's less than 10 acres, is there any way it can be included with the original farm at deferred values?
So I believe you said you have different owners of the properties?
It is now.
Okay. Well, if there's different owners, they would have to qualify on their own. Yeah.
I have a little farm out from Garner, between Garner and Clayton area, and the land out in the area is very expensive. But anyway, when the property was revaluated, I got a revaluation last. It must have been Monday this week, and I was kind of astonished at the amount it went up. And I could sell this property, and I could, of course, reinvest it, and I could make more money than I am messing with farming. I'll tell you that. So, but I want to stay on the farm, and I like the farm. And I was wondering what the commissioner is going to do about lowering the tax rate. I know the evaluation is going up quite a bit. Does anybody know anything about that? It says Wake County Farmland Preservation, and that's what I want, if I can afford it.
So I'll say revaluation is required by state law, and properties have to be assessed at market value. For those who are enrolled in PUV, That's the benefit of the program, because you are having your taxes deferred versus paying those taxes on market value. Now, I will say tax bills are a component of two things: tax rate and assessed value. By law, tax administration handles the assessed value. Those tax rates are adopted by the governing board. So if you did see increases in your bills, it's result of those value times the tax rate is what you're paying. I can't speak to what the governing boards are doing on the adopted rates. I can just speak to the value.
Any other questions? Yeah, we got several.
Good morning. On an inheritance issue, if a piece of property is bequeathed to other members of a family through an estate, do the new owners have to reapply for the continuation of these programs within 30 days, or does it continue as long as the property is not subdivided into any other form?
We would prefer that you do fill out a new application just because of the ownership change, but the statute does allow for it to go to heirs without a rollback. We prefer because it is a new owner, yeah. And there could be an update to contact information and that kind of stuff.
Yes, if you cut out a building lot for a family member on the farm and you get notice about the back taxes and you pay that, you don't have to do anything else, do you, to keep the rest of the farm? It's still enough acreage.
That's correct. You're going to pay a rollback on that 1 acre, but everything else, as long as it meets those minimum 3 requirements, you should be fine.
Okay, thank you.
So my question is, if you have the PV property, and then you have a piece of property attached to that borderline that was a resident, not in the program, can you go back now, and the resident has, that place has been dissolved, can I pull that piece back into the PUV?
Yes. As long as you have that qualifying tract and you're doing some kind of farming with that little piece, you can pull it in the month of January, or either you can file right now, but you would need a valid good cause for it really to be considered.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you guys for letting us be here this morning. And myself, Braxton, Chuck, we're sitting up front. Come find us at the break. We're happy to answer more questions.
They will be here, so if you still want to ask questions, they'll be here through lunch. Is that right, guys? Y'all plan to stay through lunch? So one of the things I'll take away, I was talking to Chuck, that I think that I learned from this, and because we do have a lot of development, a lot of roadway construction. If you're in the voluntary ag district, we do have a public hearing process before they can condemn your property for, DOT can for a roadway or for water and sewer. There is a public hearing process. If you're not in our voluntary ag district program, you need to be, just for that reason alone, because you do have an option to have that public hearing for that. But think about that. If they are condemning part of your land and it's taken out of PUV, they do have to pay back, DOT does, or whoever that agency is, will have to pay back that deferred taxes. But if it drops you below the minimum qualifying acres, it removes you from PUV for life. So you need to be negotiating that with that entity through a process to make sure at all costs that you keep the acres you need to qualify for this program. So very important to think about. If you start getting those notices that, hey, we're going to be impacting your property, you really need to start. First of all, you need to be in our voluntary ag district program so that we can be talking to you and advocating for you and helping you through that process to understand what consequences may come from that. but also think about present use value when you're looking at that. So thank y'all so much. We're thrilled to welcome back Tammy Bruner, Wake County Register of Deeds, this morning. She was first elected in 2020, re-elected, landslide, right, Tammy, in 2024. Tammy has become a valued member of our Keeping the Farm family. The transactions and records handled by the Register of Deeds play a vital role, goes hand in hand with the tax office, for you. And Tammy is here to share insights on their services, how they can help you and assist you in what they do every day. So thank you, Tammy.
Good morning. I want to start that with this by saying, Register of Deeds is a recording agency. Hard stop. We record your documents. The tax department is a verification agency. That's important later in the slideshow that I have somewhere. Oh, I need to do it? Okay, I can do that. That's all right. I just like graphs because I don't always understand a list of numbers. So I just made a few graphs for you. There's 6 graphs. I can talk about it, or you can just check it out. I just wanted to show you what the median real estate price monthly was, starting in February of 24 all the way to February of 25. It's not fluctuating so much right now. In 21 and 22, it was a completely different graph. And next year, I'll add that. But I hope that most of you get an email from me every month that talks about exactly this. What is the median value? What has sold? What hasn't sold? What are percentages coming out of our office? And I'll tell you at the end how to sign up for that email. In that email, I talked to you about how many homes or properties were purchased between, $1 million or less dollars, $1 million to $30 million, or more than $30 million. And if it's more than $30 million, I pull it out and make sure y'all know where and what and how this purchase happened. But I just wanted to show you how the growth is in Wake County from 2012 up to 2024, and just always want to point out what 21 and 22 looked like. These are the amount of deeds that we do every month. We have, there are 99 other registers in the state of North Carolina. Every county has one, right? When I show them a graph like that, most of them faint because they can't imagine this much property moving in their county on a regular basis. Just to show you how fast we are growing just from people within the county that aren't moving in. They already live here. These are the births from 2023 to 2025. And these are the deaths. So there was a period of time in 2018, 2019 that deaths were higher than births. And that was a concern, but that is no longer a concern. And these are the amount of people that are getting married in Wake County every month. It doesn't really actually mean they got married in Wake County, but they got married in North Carolina and got their marriage license from our office. I say this every year. It is literally my tagline. What is the Register of Deeds office? The Register of Deeds office is the most important office that you've never heard of. Every single thing that's important in your life happens through this office. Your birth, your death, your marriage, your property, all happens here. And there are multiple departments within the Department of Register of Deeds. There's vital records. Everything that's vital happens in there. Birth, death, marriages. We also give the notary oath. And DD-214s can be filed for free in our office. DD-214s are military discharge papers, and it's really handy to record them with our office, so if something happens, you know exactly where to get them. They are under lock and key. They're the only record we have in our office that's not public record. The recording, I just wanted to list some of the deeds that we record, some of the different types of documents we record. We probably have about 150 different types of documents, but these are the ones that we do the most. And indexing, once you record this document, it is sent to indexing. That is how you can search it and find it on our website. And those folks do it twice. So they read through everything, and you are able to look up most anything from our records. And a few years ago, we opened a passport office. This is the breakdown of what happens in each department and what our department looks like as a whole. My staff asked me to give this part, and every time I speak to a group of people, because people think the Register of Deeds office actually does everything, and we don't. I'm not going to read all of them, but I just want to point out a few. We are by law not able to give you legal advice. I cannot tell you how to complete your deed. I cannot tell you what happens if my brother stole this piece of property. I can't do any of that by law. And that really annoys people, because sometimes we actually know the answer, but we just can't tell you and defer you to an attorney. We handle marriages. We don't do divorces. That's in a whole different office. That's handled by the Clerk of Court of Wake County. Just because we are Wake County Register of Deeds does not mean we have records for the state of North Carolina. We only have state records for the county of Wake. We are not North Carolina Vital Records, and we can't help you get your Social Security card. We don't have anything to do with that. And just pointing out again, because we're going to talk about fraud soon, we are a recording agency. We are not a verification agency. These are just a few of the mistakes that deeds get rejected for. They're not prepared with an attorney. I loved that Braxton pointed out that if you're getting ready to record something, come talk to him and make sure it's all done right, because he's right. Once it's recorded, and I have to have a court order to do anything. It will never be removed from record, but there will be a marking on the deed, but it will be there forever. Excise tax is missing, the grantee or the grantor's name or the legal description of a property. It's another thing people don't really understand, which I didn't either. Most times on your deed, there isn't really an actual address, which is why you can't search by address on our website. There's a property description. So in case the address is moved, I'll be able to find your property by what is around it, because that description is in the deed. Last time I was here, I think I talked to you about one of the projects that we did. We talked about the Enslaved Persons Project. From the Enslaved Persons Project grew this Racially Restrictive Covenants Project that we just completed. I just want y'all to think for a minute. Our land records go back to 1785. So imagine the history that's actually in those books that aren't pulled out for everybody to either see or use to do papers or studies. So we pulled out the racially restrictive covenants. These years range from 1900 to 1950. There were over 600,000 documents, and the people that managed the project, which was done 100% by volunteers, used AI to narrow it down to 20,000 documents. And in the end, we found actually 14,500 documents that showed a restrictive covenant on a property, meaning a racially restrictive covenant on a project, saying that people of color couldn't live there. Lots of them even said people of Irish descent, Scottish descent. There were all kinds of ways to block who they wanted in these neighborhoods. And this is one of the many tools that was used over the years nationwide. And I just want to point that out because it's not a Southern thing. This happened across the country. It happened up north. It's not just a Southern thing that we did this. So if you ever get the opportunity to see the people that actually did the work on this project present the whole project, I really encourage you. It's quite amazing what they were able to do and what we learned from it. So I just pulled out a few of the slides. This is a map of Raleigh now, or Wake County now. The blue line right there was what the limits were back in 1905. So that's mainly where the population of the county lived. When we pulled out all of the restrictive covenants and placed them on a map by property description, this is what you see where all of the restrictive covenants are. And to kind of just get you grounded, this is Avon Ferry Road. So you know you're going to Cary this way, you're going to Knightdale, Wendell, Zebulon that way. You're inside the Beltline here. So I've always wanted a map of this. I don't know who knows about a red line map, but Wake County never had a red line map only because our population wasn't large enough to do it. But I always believed that if we could have one of these maps, we would see that the underserved parts of Wake County today are the exact same underserved parts of Wake County then. And as you can see with this map, it's proof that that's true. Those, the red parts here are the wealthy parts of Wake County. They were then, they are now. This big block over here to the bottom right of your screen, that got messed up because that's not inside the Beltline or one of the wealthier areas in the county, but that only happened because it got messed up over school placement. Like I just said, I always thought that a map would show us that the underserved parts of the county now were the underserved parts of the county then, and so the volunteers that did this used this social vulnerability index, which it's just a proxy, another word for underprivileged. They took this information and laid it over the map that we were just looking at, and as you can see, the different colors tell you different things. The wealthiest parts are the white, the darker green is the more underprivileged. And it's exactly what we thought it would be. And people ask, what is the importance of this? There's a number of things, but I'll only say a few. Number one, it's history. It's in the books. It's just sitting there. Why haven't we done this before? When we're talking about development and growth of the county, when we're talking about how we're going to spend the taxes, these are the types of things that people can use to actually figure out where can this money go to really get what we're trying to get out of our values that the county lives by. A totally different subject. So that was the racially restrictive covenants, but now I just want to talk about the Wake County Regional Centers. They don't really have anything to do with my office, but they're a gold mine in this county, and I don't believe enough people know that they exist. These are all of the things that these regional centers can do. For our office, you can do marriage license, notary oaths, get your birth certificate, your marriage and death, because who wants to come downtown and find a parking space and go through a metal detector to come into my office to get a copy of these things? These are where all of the centers are throughout the county. They're perfectly placed. They're building a new one in Cary that should be open next year. It's just a valuable, valuable resource, and I urge you when you're trying to do something with the county to see if it's offered at a regional center before heading downtown. Like I said, all regional centers offer your birth, death, and marriage certificates. The Fuquay and Wake Forest also do the notary oaths and the marriage licenses, and Zebulon is starting that on April 1st. I say this every year too. No one can find anything on our website but my email address. That is the only thing they can find. They can never find how to get their birth, marriage, or death certificates, and I think it's pretty obvious what I should click to get my birth, marriage, and death certificate, but I'm here to help, so happily we'll respond to the email. So I just wanted to show you that's what our website looks like. Those are the first choices that you can make when you're looking for items. And then down below breaks it down a little bit more. You're searching your real estate records. You're going to have a whole video of how to apply for your marriage license. We'll talk about the fraud alert in just a second. If you need to create a business name, an assumed business name, there's all your resources, and then hours and frequently asked questions. This is currently what our website looks like when you want to search for your property records. Like I said, you can't search by address because we don't index by address because we don't always have the address. You have to search by grantor or grantee. So that's what it looks like today. April 21st, it's going to look like this. I think I've spoken to y'all 3 times, and every year I tell you that we're getting a new system, X date, and it still hasn't happened. And that's only because I'm terrified, actually, of getting a whole new property records system, and I need it to be absolutely perfect. If you are somebody that searches for deeds and want to get more familiar with the new system, Durham has this exact same system. So you can go in there and figure out all of the places to look and how best to search for a property record. So I don't know if all of y'all heard in the news last year how a fraud happened in Wake County and how exciting that was for my office. So we have a fraud alert system. There is legislation coming out, or at least bills have been filed to make fraud alerts mandatory in every county. Not every county has them. This is on our website. You can go in and sign up for fraud alert, but I want to be very clear what fraud alert is. It's an alert. It's not a stop. There's really not a way we can stop fraud if somebody is following all of the rules and we're fooled by them because they're committing a crime, but it looks like they're following all of the rules. A fraud alert means you sign up for this, and when you sign up, it's going to ask you very clearly to sign up with multiple names. So if I was signing up for fraud alert, I would sign up for Tammy Bruner, Tammy L. Bruner, Tammy Lynn Bruner, my husband's name, Robert Lane, Robbie Lane, all of the different ways that somebody could record a document in my name, but I don't really remember what my deed actually said. The first home I bought said Tammy Bruner. The second home I bought said Tammy Lynn Bruner. So if I had just put Tammy Bruner, Tammy Lynn Bruner, I may or may not receive that email. What this email is going to do, we're going to get it to you by the end of the day. If anybody came into our office and recorded a deed that has anything to do with your name, we'll send you an email and let you know that this happened. That is as far as we can go. Now, please call us and we'll talk you through the next steps. But what I want to be clear is this is not a fraud stop. This is a fraud alert. Something has happened and you need to take steps. The only way that anything can change in my office is by legislation. And so I'll say it again, we are a recording agency. We are not a verification agency. We don't do a title search on your property when you record a deed in our office. There are a list of things that we must look for, and we really don't have the ability, we have the ability, but we don't have the permission to look for other things. What we plan to do next, we really are going to go live with that software, hopefully April 21st, so next year we can talk about how we went live. And we're holding our second annual Passport Fair in this room on March 27th from 9 to 3. I don't know if any of you ever try to get an appointment for a passport. It's not easy. So this is, you just walk in, you have all of your information, and we will process your application and send it to the State Department. Last year when we had this, we did about 375 passports that day. We do 35 passports in a normal day. This is just the volume of work that the Register of Deeds does here in Wake County. In 2024, it brought in almost a total of $36 million for the county. And this is how to get to all of us. I'm not going to be here all day. I will be here for a little bit, but here's my contact information. Please call me. Please email me. I'll happy to help with anything I can. If you are recording a property deed, Erica is your best bet, and if you have any questions about vital records, Frederick Bayman is the supervisor of that department. Thank you very much.
I think we got just a couple minutes. Any quick questions for Tammy? She said she'll be here. We're getting ready to have a break after our next presenter, so she'll be here hopefully through the break if you want to just contact her. But nothing right now? Okay. All right. I'm excited about the next one. Heard a lot of good things. We have a newcomer this year to our workshop, the Land Loss Prevention Project. a dedicated organization committed to preserving family farms. They provide legal support and assistance to financially distressed and limited resource farmers and landowners across North Carolina. Joining us today is Annette Hyatt, a senior staff attorney with the organization. They also have a table in the back this morning. She is passionate about working one-on-one with clients to help families maintain their connection to their land. Ms. Hyatt holds a Bachelor of Social Work from UNC Charlotte and a JD from Case Western Reserve University. Please join me in giving a warm Wake County welcome to Annette.
Well, good morning, y'all. My name is Annette, and wave at me if you can't hear me or if I'm talking too fast or too slow, and I will try and work on this tech. Y'all are fancy. Maybe? Huh. So I wanted to come here, and I have already been learning this morning, and there's some things in my presentation that you guys are going to already know based on what we just heard from the Register of Deeds and the tax office. So we're going to breeze right through here and get you to your break, which is great. So we are a nonprofit law firm. We're based out of Durham, but we cover the whole state. We were founded in 1983, and we work directly with individuals, homeowners, and farmers to make sure that they have the legal protection to hold on to their land and homes. And we do this because we feel like the ownership of land, it's not just about owning a piece of property. It's not about the dirt. It's about community connection. It's about building generational wealth. It has historically been a way that you assert your rights, even voting rights. And obviously, for this community, it's access to food, farming, shelter, and all the things that you need for your life and family. So we have a lot of challenges that people face when they're trying to keep their property, especially when you're in rural community or in facing rapid development. So those increasing values make it hard to choose between keeping that farmland or selling it. You have accessing farm programs, and USDA is outside to kind of give us some information about some of those programs that help. And Farm Credit is here as well, ways that people can access funds to be able to operate their farms, and business succession planning and estate planning. So those are ways that you keep your land and your family and be able to pass it on. So I think y'all probably hear about this, you know it firsthand, more than most people, is that there's a lot of pressure on farmland ownership now. North Carolina is leading the country in the loss of farmland. Over 950,000 acres of farmland are lost just in 20 years. And American Farmland Trust estimates that we rank second in the nation if we keep up on our current trends by 2040. So this is kind of a map that we put together of the change in number of acres that are used in farmland. And North Carolina County has lost an average of 9,686 acres. Granville County lost the most with 45,000 acres in 20 years. And Martin County actually in the east gained the number of acres in that same time period. But they lost farmers. So the average size of farms grew. So in some ways that suggests some consolidation. So people are kind of acquiring more farmland, but less farmers. So specific to Wake County, population, of course, y'all hear about the population increase. We saw it in the statistics from the Register of Deeds. 75% between 2001 and 2021. And the loss of farmland in that same period of time was 18 square miles of pastureland and cropland. And that's just a development. So this is a picture from the Wake County kind of planning where they're showing kind of where the development is happening. So Wake County actually in that same time period lost more than the state average of its farmland, 33% of the farmland in 20 years. And also losing number of farmers, and an 5% increase in the number of producers. So that could be a number of smaller farmers. So I'd be interested kind of in y'all's production and hear whether you're small farmers, new farmers, or just trying to kind of continue what you're doing. So that's one of the things that we talk a lot about is what do you do when things are changing around you? How do you play up, how do you get involved in that decision-making process? What do you do when you see kind of the widening of the roads, the development, the neighborhoods that are coming towards you where it used to be more farmland? And so we work directly with individuals at that point to kind of look and see what those rights are. And this is the part where I think we'll get to coast a little bit because the Register of Deeds has been here every year and kind of gives you this information. But we have a couple of slides on kind of what you have, what's in that deed, and what kind of title do you transfer in your deed, because that indicates and tells you what you can do going forward. So you might have ownership just in your own name. That's called a fee simple ownership. It means you can do whatever you want with the property. You can transfer it to the next person. You can deed it. You can will it. You may have a life estate. A life estate is a different ownership, and it allows you to do those things, but while you're living. And it will name a person who the property goes to after you pass away. So it kind of creates, it will have another person's name in it. Tenancy by the entirety is an ownership that is based, created for a husband and wife, spouses, and it creates an interesting thing that happens where when one of the spouses passes away, then it automatically goes over to the next spouse's name. So it doesn't have to or require a transfer. And then we have a tenancy in common. Tenancy in commons are shared ownership. And often where we deal with this, it is ownership between family members. So another form of ownership that you'll hear about sometimes is called heir property. Heir property is what happens when you have family ownership of land, where you might have had a title, a deed that was written to the original owner, and then someone passed away without having a will, or they left a will where they left the property to multiple people. So they could have said, well, I want my house and my farm to go to my 3 children. And if the 3 children don't do something, then it may go to their children. But I'll give you an example. So when you have your deed, you will have certain things that are referenced in your deed. I think we had a good summary of kind of what needs to be in those deeds. So the one thing I really want to point out is the property description. So property description, especially when you're looking at an older deed, is usually something that will describe the boundaries of the property. If it is in more current surveying kind of technology, you might see something that says, degrees northwest and 15 feet this way and 45 degrees to here. And it will describe the entire boundary of your property as well as the acreage. Some of your older deeds, when they're described in the survey, will look like this. So that's super fun. So this is a deed from 1902 in Wake County, and you'll see that it is hard to read, first of all. But second, when you get through the cursive, which is actually really well done, you will see that they reference the property description by talking about other people's boundaries, right? So they talk about going Sears line to a cedar stake on the Olive Chapel Road, right? So that references things that may not be there anymore. The Sears family may have moved away. The olive stake may no longer be in the ground, the cedar stake, sorry. And when you have a property description that is older like this and it references things like trees and rocks, it's time for a new survey. And unfortunately what that is that it's expensive, right? It's hard to find a surveyor. Trust is a really big thing because especially when you have a deed that is referenced or written in 1902, it may say 30 acres more or less, 75 acres more or less. And then the surveyor comes out there with their kind of gear and their tripods, and then they tell you it's actually 20 acres. So it's usually less, which is really hard because you may have been operating on that land with the assumption you may have been paying taxes on that land with the assumption and understanding that you have 45 acres, right? So it's important to get those surveys updated so you know where your boundaries are. And GIS and tax office records are wonderful, but they are not legal descriptions. Your legal description in your deed is what you're supposed to, it's notice, right? When you file your deed, you file your plat map, that is notice to any subsequent owner of what your property is. And so that's why it's another important reason to update those survey descriptions. So when you have neighbors purchase property next to you, that you have the right boundary between yourselves. So this leads me to heir property. Because a lot of time when we're dealing with older deed records, it is, kind of a family that may own that land and they've owned it for generations. They've managed it for generations. But you may have an older survey. So heir property, as I mentioned, is just where there's family ownership of property that's been passed down generationally. And it really is, it's kind of one of those things where they have worked and managed to keep the property for generations, and it is a strength. A lot of people will talk about heir property as though it is something that has to be managed, and it does, right? There are tools to manage it, but it does represent a lot of time and effort, and there's family members that have stayed on the property for a long time. So in the Southeast, research has estimated that there's almost 500,000 parcels of heir property. And I already mentioned how it's created. It is either created by someone that passes away without leaving a will. There's a statutory section in the North Carolina general statutes that says how that land is passed and who inherits interest and what their share is. Or it can be done with someone that creates a will and then leaves the land to multiple people. This is a map of where heir property is most heavily located in North Carolina, with the darker shades of red being the higher percentages. There is approximately, it's hard to evaluate the ownership of heir property because every county lists it differently. But this study attempted to get the numbers around it, and they found that there were about 88,000 parcels of heir property just in North Carolina, with a market value of more than $8 billion. So if we had time, I would go through this example to let you see a little bit about how heir property ownership can be complicated very quickly. I will just say, if you imagine that Pam was the original owner with 3 children, and if you can say if Pam passes away and they have 3 children, then those 3 children will share equal ownership, 1/3 equal share. That means they can use the land, they can live on the land, they can deed their interest in the land. They can do all kinds of things, but they have to do it, respecting the rights of the other co-owners. Now, if 2 of those children have 3 children, and one of them were to pass away, their 1/3 share goes down the line. But you can see, if I added a couple more generations with children of children and different dates of death, that it can be and become very quickly complicated. And so the most important thing that we would say in those situations is to have a family tree, because the dates of death matter, who people were married to matters, where those children are and getting together in terms of making a management strategy, all of that matters. And it can be done because you can come together and figure out how to manage it together. One of the challenges, though, that you'll see when there's heir property ownership is figuring out who's using the land, who's paying the taxes on the land, and what is happening on the property. You can farm it, you can lease it out, you can enter into a timber contract, but you need to have everybody kind of on the same page with that, because the profits of those enterprises need to be shared among all the co-owners. And what happens, I think, especially with families that may have had property and then maybe some of the folks have moved away, is that there is a disconnect. And you know, some of the farmers in the room may feel that already with children and kind of understanding who's going to take over the farm. You know, when children don't live and they don't operate on the land anymore, it is difficult to be committed to paying the taxes on the property, to want to keep the property. And especially when you have folks that move to another state, they may say, oh, we've got 40 acres of land here in North Carolina, that's probably worth $1 million, right? And it could be true, it could be, especially with the way that the property taxes are increasing, the evaluations are increasing. But often there's a different estimation, and so the land becomes a value, a monetary value, as opposed to the value of what you can do on the land, the security of being able to put a home on the land. So that's one of the biggest things is that we see as a challenge on trying to keep the land, who's going to pay the taxes. Because the tax office, you know, they have a mandate where they need to collect the taxes, and if they become delinquent, they will collect the taxes through a foreclosure, which means that you can then lose the property. And, you know, with folks that are on the land and trying to pay the taxes, sometimes for years and years and years on their own, it is hard. It's hard to do. There's also special protection for family members when there's a mortgage on the property and you maybe the person who entered into the mortgage passed away and they have children that want to be able to protect the home. You know, there are federal protections for those family members to step into the shoes of that person that was paying the mortgage, but they have to be able to speak to the bank about doing that. And so that's one thing I would say is that if there are families that kind of, there's an inheritance issue, an estate issue, you know, immediately talk to the attorney about how to manage that so you don't end up where the mortgage becomes delinquent and then there's a foreclosure pending as well. So we work a lot with heir property families to figure out how to resolve that ownership, and in the interest of time, I will just say there are multiple ways to do that, and they kind of vary from the least legal commitment with a tenant in common agreement. So that is kind of like a contractual agreement where all the heirs would come together and they would say, we would like to do this on the property, this is our point person for the property, and we're all going to do these things. We are in agreement that we want to lease out the farmland or we want to operate a farm. And they would kind of give rights to each other and kind of develop a process for communication. That you can also do that with a limited power of attorney, but you would want to make sure that you have everyone's names, everyone's interest represented in those documents. As you get up into a layer of complexity, you might have an LLC. You might form a family business to operate the land, and then you would need to deed the ownership, everyone's ownership interest into the LLC. You can also have a family trust. Taxes and impacts on property value. I think you guys heard a lot of really good stuff on this already, so I'm going to be able to skip over the property tax reduction programs. The next slide is on PUV. I just wanted to touch a little bit on primary resident property reduction programs because there are the homestead protection and the circuit breaker programs. Those are on primary residence, and they are income-based. So the circuit breaker program has a slightly higher income threshold, but it's a deferral program. And then the homestead exclusion will reduce those taxes, but you either need to show that you're under a certain income level and or permanently disabled. So there are certain requirements, and it does require an application. These are the farmland programs that you've already heard about. Yay. And you know, I think one of the things that we always advocate for, especially in the farm community where farmers want to hold on to the land and see it retained as farmland, is considering the use of conservation easements. And you have great representatives over here with TLC and the state program to talk about being able to use conservation easements. to be able to protect the property long-term, to be able to see it as farmland. It is one of those ways that you can definitely prevent it from being turned over into development, because the development rights in those long-term easements are typically taken and given to that conservation agency. So I think if that's one of those considerations where you really want to see the land stay as farmland, it is a longer process, but it is one where you can do that. You can actually have that control, because it's very hard to write it into a deed where you say, I want it to be farmland forever. This allows you to do that. So one of the last things that we wanted to cover is kind of looking at changes, whether it's those roads that are coming in, zoning, neighborhoods, and ways that people can be engaged and understand what's happening. You know, I think that is the issue with growth, right, is that change is coming, and you can see the directions that it's coming, especially looking at that older map with the bright blue spots. And there are ways to kind of stay on top of that information. The Planning Commission, there are boards, voluntary boards, that you can kind of go to those meetings and join, that I think are really important ways to kind of stay on top of what's happening. And the farmland board too. So this is a slide on zoning. I think we can answer questions about that. And this one is really related to rezoning. So kind of the process that happens and the notice that has to be given when a parcel is rezoned. If you're an immediate neighbor, usually you'll get notice. You can go to those planning and public meetings. Another part that we feel is a really helpful use is the voluntary ag districts. I think we've already heard that. So half of my presentation you guys already have covered, which is amazing and wonderful. The voluntary ag districts, I think, are particularly relevant when you have issues with condemnation, because it does have that enhanced notice. Bonafide farm, that's another piece that comes along with development. So Bonafide farm is a statutory exemption from certain development kind of ordinances. So it takes those farms, when they're active farms and sometimes agritourism, out of that zoning. It doesn't mean that there's a complete exemption from all permits, but it does say that certain zoning will not apply. So that does protect farms, especially when the area around them starts to develop. So if you are not considered as a bona fide farm in Wake County, but you're farming, then I think that would be one thing that I would double check with, so that you can make sure you're enrolled in that program. So if your neighbors say, well, why are you building that farm stand, or why are you putting up that barn, then you have some exemption and some protection. So the last thing that I have to cover, and then maybe y'all will have some questions, is the importance of estate planning. If you look at the farm statistics, not only do they talk about how we're losing our farmers and our farmland, it will talk about our increasing age of farmers, and that's been steady. It's been like that. It's not a new thing, that our average age of farmers is closer to 60. But it does talk about the importance of deciding what you want to do for that farm. How do you want to have it passed on? How do you want to pass on your land? And it is important to go ahead and write that down and put it into more formal documents. And I think that Mr. Page is going to be here to give you some really good in-depth information about that. I just kind of wanted to highlight it as something that is kind of important to consider, and maybe something that we don't always want to consider. Basics of estate planning is just writing a will. And I put down some requirements about them. You have to be at least 18. You have to be competent to understand what you're signing. And when you sign it, you have to sign it in front of a notary. So if you work on writing an estate plan and then you sign it on your own and then you take it to the notary, they're not going to do that. They're not going to notarize that signature because they can't prove that it was you. So you have to wait and sign it in front of that notary. There's other forms of documents that typically come along with a will, which is a durable power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. Our healthcare power of attorney combines terms with what you might think of as a living will, which kind of tells your caretakers how do you want to, like, what are your standards, right? If you're in a situation where the doctors don't think that you're going to be able to continue living, you can put down kind of what is your quality of life, what's your definition, what do you want them to do? And so you would kind of mark that down on that healthcare power of attorney. 5 minutes. That's it. So if y'all have some questions, I would love to kind of see what's on your minds. If not, I will be in the back corner, and I don't want to hold you from snacks. So,
Any questions for Annette? Oh, I see one. I think we got a mic runner. Hopefully we at least get you one, Annette. So, great job, by the way. A lot of good information.
How do you register a bona fide farm? I mean, we have a farm number, but that doesn't seem to matter anymore.
so I'll go back to the slide that talks about bona fide farm because the actual requirements are in there. It is written in statute what criteria you have to meet to be considered a bona fide farm, and farm number is one of those kind of indicators that you're farming on a property. It's not specifically listed in the statute. What they'll look at is your Schedule F. That's one. Your farm sales tax revenue, your state revenue, farm sales tax exclusion. And kind of, they protect activities that are agricultural. Okay. Where? So you would go to the planning office.
I guess she's thinking of Wake County Planning, is that right? And they're here today. Are they outside? Is that right? Okay, they're outside. So I'll try to get some of the staff in here. At break, I would encourage you to go see them at Wake County Planning. Yes, our staff that's here right outside, and to talk with them about that. But Annette's right. You know, there's in the statute, there's that, you know, being in present use value is one qualifier. If you're in that for a bona fide farm, like she said, you know, the sales tax exemption from the North Carolina Department of Revenue, your forest management plan as well. So there's a couple general statutes that says that, but talk to us, talk to planning. We can get you in the right place to make sure you've got those documents to prove that you're a bona fide farm in Wake County.
I've heard from another county that they look at PUV and automatically kind of connect them. So it will be good to kind of hear. And some counties actually have an application form. So.
Very good question. David?
Annette, first and foremost, thank you for being here this year and welcome to the workshop. In her introduction, Teresa said that you serve the financially distressed, I believe was her terminology, and I dare say I probably speak for the majority of people in this room who are farmers or either persons who are trying to preserve their land. We probably all feel like we're financially distressed to some degree, but in all seriousness, what is the primary demographic that your agency serves, and are you available to work with individuals who may be in this room?
Yeah, thank you for that clarifying question. I realize I didn't cover, normally we, as a nonprofit law firm, we do offer all of our services at no cost. And so we would be available to work. Typically, our qualification is income-based. So we would look at a family income and then kind of check to see if it's under a certain income level, which is typically associated and correlated with the poverty line. I think with farmers, we understand that, and we reflect in our kind of evaluation of cases that farm income is sporadic. It is not regular income, and so we kind of have some flexibility in terms of the income level for farm community that we can work with. And, you know, it will really ultimately depend on whether it fits within our mission area and our areas of expertise, because we don't want to just take on people and then say, oh, we're not sure that that's within our area of expertise. So thank you for that question.
Okay, I got the 1 minute sign, but we have somebody from planning, and I think she's going to turn on her mic, and she's going to answer your question, and everybody may have the same question about where to go and what to do for Bonafide Farm.
Excellent.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you so much.
Okay, hi, yes. So for structures, for structures like barns and other like farm-related structures, you would fill out a form under the land use forms and the planning and development and inspection forms. And so you just basically, it's going to be a land use permit simple, and then you fill out the associated supplemental farm form. And so we just basically just ask, you know, what is the structure for? Sometimes depending on if it's for animals or if it's for equipment and or, you know, seeds or things like that, we ask that you provide some of the tax information as well as a site plan that just shows where it's going to be. And then we just make sure that it's not going to affect any of the wastewater if it's nearby a house or something like that. And so we're able to move forward with that. So that's how you permit the farm structures if you need to do that.
Does that help answer the questions? And of course, we work with planning about daily right now. Every day, right? We're working with planning. We got the local area plan going on in eastern Wake County right now. So if you have questions, need help going through that process, they're right outside. They've got their cards. And we're here, and our staff is a resource too. Call us. We'll put you in contact with the right person. We'll get your questions answered. We'll get it done. I promise you, right? How many in here have I promised that hasn't done that, right? We have. We'll get it done, I promise. Is Don ready to speak? Don Belk? All right, Don. I'll let you give him a mic if you don't mind. So getting ready to get to your break, so we're going to have Don. He'll talk about the Friends and the stuff we're doing with our scholarship here.
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Belk. I am the secretary for the board of directors for the Friends of Wake Soil and Water Conservation District. We are the nonprofit arm of the district. We are a volunteer group of citizens of all persuasions and ages. We believe that preserving farmland as well as preserving a vibrant agribusiness sector are both vital to the county's quality of life. We support and advocate for the programs and work of the district. We started about 15 years ago when the county administration at the time proposed eliminating the Soil and Water Conservation District because, in their words, it was no longer needed in Wake County because we are a fast-growing urban county. And a group of citizens felt otherwise. They lobbied strongly and in support of the district, and that function was maintained, and as you well know today, it is thriving. So in addition to our assistance to and our advocacy for the district, we have 2 scholarship programs that are dedicated to helping young people get a start in careers of natural resource conservation and environmental education. Each year, in partnership with the district, we offer scholarships to Wake County high school students to attend the Resource Conservation Workshop at NC State University. In 2023, we stood up the Sheila B. Jones Environmental Education Scholarship Fund, named in honor of the famed educator Sheila Jones, who is well known to many of you. That scholarship provides $1,000 to a Wake County high school student or a current college student who hails from Wake County to help them support their academic goals in the field of environmental education. At the table outside, the table at the corner, you'll find info about the Friends. We have our brochure. We also have a couple of placards that describe our scholarship programs. We would love to have you as a member and volunteer, as well as your donations to our scholarship fund. Our webpage is friendsofwakesoil.org. We invite you to check us out, and thank you, and the Friends are proud to be one of the sponsors of this great event. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you so much. We're going to get you to the break, I promise. If I got the staff can come on up, we're going to do the raffle. Do you have your raffle tickets in there? If you can pull those out, we're going to do that. Again, the yellow survey, please start on that, get that completed. I believe we're going to have another survey that's going to be distributed for the One Water survey. It's different. It should be on white paper. Our farmland preservation is on yellow. The One Water survey will be on white paper. And so to be able to fill both of those out, it's very important. So Nancy Daly is here from Environmental Services. She'll be going over that One Water survey soon, even though I know it's passed out now, but she'll be talking about it in her presentation. Both in surveys are very important to get filled and back to us today. So let's do the Ag Carolina raffle. I guess I just pulled out. Okay, raffle is in your name tag. I'm sorry. If your raffle ticket is in your name tag. Everybody got it? Let me know. Give me a thumbs up that we're ready for me to pull, right? Okay. All right. The last three is 467. 467. It's close. 467. Come on up. Come on up and pick your prize here. And y'all tell me when to stop, okay? So I'll go with the next one. 484. No? Okay. 484. Come on up. And we'll have more right before lunch. I think the grand prize is down there that I want, but I can't get it. So a great one from Agri Supply today. Next one, 533. 533. Nobody? Okay. 533. Yep. Okay. You told me to call another number. Okay. I'm going to set that to the side. I don't know who got that one. 556. You see somebody? Okay. 556. Okay. All right. Keep going. Okay. 559. He's putting words in my mouth. 559. Nobody? Going once? Okay, we got it. Come on up here, Fred. Still going, right? One more, okay? 520. 520. There he is. And we'll have some more right before lunch. Is that right? That's it for now? Okay. So please don't forget, there's breakfast in the back, but these people are here waiting for you to talk to them. All of our vendors here to talk to them. Please visit them. We're giving you some extra time before we get to our next presenter, and then I'll come back and let you know when we need to get back in the seats and start with our next presenter after the break. Okay, enjoy your break. These folks will be here also through lunch in the tables, so you can go back to see them then and get your questions answered, get the information. I don't want to forget about the folks outside. Planning's getting a lot of questions from me in here, so Wake County Planning, Zoning, and Inspections is outside at their table, so please visit them as well. I'll get my staff to try to help me get everybody back to their seat. All right, we're working on it. Justin, y'all come on up. Justin, Danny, y'all come on up. I'm going to let y'all sit right over here, okay? All right, we're going to get started. If y'all could just make your way back to your seat, please. We're already behind, and I know you're going to want lunch. You're going to be hungry in a minute. Looking at me, talking about when's lunch. Got a delicious lunch this morning, too, so. All right. This is a very special time of our workshop that we do every year, that we have a farm family come in to share their personal story and how they had to transition to keep the family farm. And this is a very special one today, and I've researched this farmer a little bit, watched some videos that Danny has putting out, and they have a remarkable message for y'all. I'm going to start the introduction, and then I'm going to let them kind of go into their personal story, how they transitioned and keep the farm, and then we're just going to have a chat, questions that I'm going to ask them. They're going to share their experiences and stuff. But Page Farms is a fourth-generation family farm. Fourth generation. Still thriving on the same land where it all began. Since its purchase in 1922, the 100-acre farm has undergone significant changes, and they're going to tell you about that today. And they've got some slides to share as well. Originally, they were traditional row crop farmers. That family that had to adapt and transition to new crops like corn and strawberries following the tobacco buyout. Please join me in welcoming Danny Page and his son Justin Page with Page Farms as he shares his family's rich history and personal journey in farming. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Danny, Justin, whoever wants to go first, and just share with us, your journey, where you came from, and where you're at now, and everything in between those two.
2005 was my last year in tobacco. 2007 was my first year I picked strawberries. And then a year ago, Justin, he came back to the farm. We raised strawberries up to, and we still do, and flowers. And we also started with the pumpkins in 2010. We did blackberries, a U-pick operation on that for about 10 years. We took them out last year. They got a disease in them, and we didn't put them back yet, and I don't know if we will or not. We do schools, field trips, and all too.
So yeah, just to continue on a little bit more of what my dad was saying there with what all we do with our strawberries, as you can see here where he started off and everything. We've done it before where we're doing it by the pound, where you'd pour them into the cardboard flats for them to take, and then we've changed over to we're doing it by the bucket instead. It's a lot more food safety conscious that way. They keep their bucket and they manage to go on and about their way with that. We do the fresh cut flowers mainly with snapdragons. It's a nice flower that comes in about the same time as Mother's Day when we have our strawberries going on, so we like to have those out there as well. Plus it's a beautiful site there at the main road. He had mentioned there about pumpkins that he brought in 2010, and we've been doing those ever since. Different things with it, though, of course, being main two crops, strawberries and pumpkins. And I know I'm going through these a little quick, but it's all right. We have the different activities along with that. Hay rides, corn crib, corn maze, even our cow train stuff, all different entertainment type aspects that friends and family can come out in the public to enjoy, but at the same time learning about what farming is and where their food comes from. Now, along with that, he had mentioned that we do field trips. We do. And here's some other activities and things, but we do field trips where we'll have different classes come from all over, different counties and things, where we can teach them more about where their stuff's coming from, because a lot of people don't know. They still believe their food's just coming out of the grocery store, wherever it comes out of that back door in the store. And that's not the case. We all know that. And hopefully we can give them that little bit of extra there as well.
Yeah, so the reason I had the Page Farms here today is because we do a survey. We're not doing it this year because our Farmland Preservation Survey and Nancy's One Water Survey is more important this year than your feedback, but we still want to hear your feedback about this workshop and what you want to hear. But last year on our survey, we got a lot of requests from folks in this room to want to hear about agritourism. How does that work? How do I get into it? What's the pros? What's the cons? You know, what is that? And so I've brought to you a family that transitioned to agritourism in that definition and is inviting the public to the farm now, right? And there's a lot of things that go in to make that happen and to make that successful. So my first question to y'all, for one of you to answer, is how hard was it for you to transition from traditional row crops to, you know, more produce type operations, field crop operations, and actually dealing with the public and having the public come to your farm?
That's the big thing right there, is dealing with the public. If you don't think you're good with the public, you don't need to get in this business. If you think you got everything fixed for them, they will find something other to get into. The public does not have no common sense no more. And I guess some of the difficult things was I didn't really know what I was doing when I got started. When I got started, you know, we had a 4-acre field out there in Fescue. I thought, man, I got all the room in the world to park cars. First 5 cars came in, made a U, blocked the whole field up. You know, so that's the reason I'm saying the public will do anything that you think they won't do.
And like he was saying there, as far as if you don't like dealing with the public, don't get into this industry. When I actually went off to college and everything before, I didn't go into horticulture and agritourism type stuff. I went into field crops because I didn't want to deal with the people. And look at me now, I'm back at the farm anyway, so we can keep it going. So, yeah.
Why did y'all feel the need to transition? What led y'all to even make that decision that we have to do this if we want to continue the legacy that you have over 100 years and your generation wants to come back and be on the farm? What led y'all to make that decision?
Well, the last year I raised tobacco, every farm that I was renting had a contract on it except for 2. And so I knew that tobacco was over with for me. I could not compete against the ones down east. And I was going to have to go from 60 acres to 150 acres to do that. There was not 150 acres in my area. We're located right at the Rod-Durham Airport at Briar Creek. You know, most of the land I was tending was in Durham County. And development just came in and took over. And I just had a good friend to tell me to plant strawberries. And he said people would come. You know, he didn't tell me about all the other stuff, though.
That's right. Some of the other questions that I have, just for y'all, lessons learned. So, you know, looking back now from where you're at, where you're at today, and where you transitioned from to today, what are some key lessons learned that, like, if you could go back, I would do this differently? I would, you know, is there any key things that you think about that you would have done differently, and hard lessons that you had to learn the hard way?
Well, that's a tough one there, because I made so many mistakes when I first got started. I guess I would have pushed more to doing the ag tourism part instead of just the U-pick operation altogether, but which everybody can't get in to the pumpkin business. You got to get in and do your story. Do your thing. Don't try to copy somebody else's stuff. You know, that's what the people is looking for now, is a family farm, and they want to know your story, not everybody else's story. And, you know, we're not putting in the bouncy houses. We're not trying to make it a theme park. Some of the farms are doing that, doing a great job. That is not us. You know, so I'm trying to stick with our story. That's
great. What do you think the opportunities are for agritourism in Wake County? What do you think that there is a need if some of the landowners on here, farmers in here are looking at, looking at other revenue sources, to keep going? What do you think that those markets are?
So, matter of fact, I actually have a slide on this. It's two forward. There's several different opportunities within agritourism that you can do, whether it is the U-pick operations like many people do, whether it's strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, you name it, even apples. People love that stuff. Wedding venues can count. The Christmas tree sales and lights and haunted trails, educational courses that you may do. That's a evening class thing for individuals related to agriculture or poultry or anything. All of that type stuff can count. Even as far as goat yoga. If it's on your farm and somebody is a yoga instructor and you have goats, it can qualify. Make sure you have the proper insurance though, because if they can touch the animal, you're in a different qualification. So it becomes more like a petting zoo. So keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. But you have all sorts of different things that could possibly be to reach out for and things. So don't keep your mind inside the box. Reach outside the box. There's always opportunities out there. If you have an idea about something on your farm to bring people on, it'll probably work. You just have to watch out for what policies and regulations may be out there and make sure you have enough insurance to cover yourself.
One of my last final questions that I had for y'all, and I know you may have some more slides to share, but we have people that may be interested in this, and so my question to you to provide to them are, what are the two most important pieces of advice, or three, or however many, if there's more than that, that somebody is looking to do this? What is I guess the top three things you would tell them to do first and foremost before they act on this? Like, what do they need to have in place first, things they need to consider first, anything like that? Do this first before you do anything else.
Sure. So first thing I would do when you're starting off with it is knowing your community. Not only knowing what your customer base is that you're looking for. Is it the small kids down here and families with smaller kids? Is it grandparents doing outings with family members and things that they don't get the opportunity to very much? Or are you looking more towards the teenage bunch that wants to come out and do haunted trails things or interesting photo shots that they did? Or are you looking more about the middle age group and younger parents and stuff getting away from the kids, going out to wineries and vineyards and things? All that is all tied into agritourism. So number one, know what your clientele is in your community. On top of that, then also within your community, knowing what they want, what's already available to them versus what you can offer. If you've already got 3 strawberry patches within 5 miles from you, don't put in a strawberry patch.
Anything else?
Another thing is have a good connection with your insurance agent. Make sure you got good insurance. Just because you got farm liability, don't think that's going to cover everything. You sit down with that insurance agent and make sure that he understands what you're doing. And we also got a sign over here I recommend to have it up. It's a little Band-Aid, as far as on the insurance part, but it helps. If somebody tries to sue you something.
And put them everywhere. Don't just have them at your entrance. Put them on your driveway coming in. Put them at an admission thing, wherever they're at. A barn, a tree, you name it. Have them everywhere. You can get these signs in all sorts of different languages and things. I'm sure they print them in all languages. But have them out there where you can say, I had it in Spanish. It's right here. I had it in English, whatever it was, to help cover yourself on that. It's not 100% though. And if you think that your, $2 million policy is enough, double it, because it won't be. Just make sure that you're covered on all bases.
That's good. Anything else that you want to share with us? Any other slides? Anything that you want to share with these folks before I open up to any questions?
We can open up
Yeah. I see a question already. I'm sorry I probably didn't get our folks, staff ready in time, but I do, and I guess you're watching our time to make sure we're good, so try to get some questions because I want to get your questions answered too.
Financing on whatever you decide to do with your farm. obviously you don't want to deplete your savings account. You've got tractors and equipment and stuff that require maintenance and repair and, you know, that type of thing. When you go out and look at putting a new crop in the field, doing some different things, as far as financing goes, do you recommend partnering up with some sort of a bank, or are you completely paying for it out of pocket, seed, fertilizer, feed for the animals, the whole deal before it became self-sufficient and you did the tobacco buyout? Did you basically foot the bill for everything yourself, or did you seek assistance through some sort of grants, banks, personal loans, that type of thing? Can you recommend something on the financial side to get it started?
Farm Credit, they got me started when I started purchasing land. I didn't never reach out and try to get too big on any of it. I didn't want to get too far in debt. So I was trying to work out of my pocket and also what I borrowed from Farm Credit.
Any other questions?
Have you feel like you've been able to influence anyone else into agriculture, young adults, kids? Have you seen them be inspired and move on to doing anything similar?
Yes, because actually we had a couple to come there yesterday and visit our farm, and they're thinking about trying to start something other in their county. We've had several to come from other counties to look at our operation, and I recommend go to other people's and look at what they're doing, you know, before you start one. You know, I wished I'd have did that before I got started into it.
And we've actually had some students and stuff that are working with us, high school students, college students and things, that have learned with us and the experiences there on the farm and decided to go off and continue in agriculture, and now they're county extension agents and things. And actually, I think one of them's a teacher, isn't she?
Yeah, one of them's a teacher.
Yeah, one's actually a teacher. So there's absolutely opportunities that we've expanded on that too.
Hi, how long did it take for it to become profitable?
Define profitable.
You know, the first year with strawberries, it was profitable. Was it making a good living? No. You know, it took, you know, I've been doing this here for, what, 18 years now. Now it's got to be pretty good profitable. It took several years to get there.
Any others? Just raise your hand and we'll get to you if you're interested or have questions for them. This is your chance to talk to somebody who's been there, done that. Sounds like they have some wounds to show for it too. So stories to tell. So while we're waiting, I see one there. If y'all can get back to him.
What is goat yoga? Well, do you know what yoga itself is? Okay, so you have a class out there that's doing yoga, and there's goats all around them climbing on top of the people and everything else. For whatever reason, city slickers like it. But yeah.
And I'll tell you one other thing too. You might have seasons, but don't think the public knows the seasons. I get calls all the time. February, can we come out and pick strawberries? The first sunny day. You know, people think when they pay to come on your farm, they own your farm. You know, this is not the business for everybody. I'm going to tell you that. You know, they're coming on the farm all the time. We have to tell them we're closed. They just drive in, they get out, and they start walking around. You know, so that's something else you got to look forward to, you know, when you get into this business.
And when you're looking to get into it, of course, use your resources that are out there. Reach out to your county extension, your FSA people. Reach out to your different commodity groups that are out there too. If you're interested in doing pumpkins or blueberries or strawberries, they all have state associations that have other resources that can help you and get you started and how to get your program going, and then even then, how to progress further along once you do. So just reach out to everybody.
And that's a good point I wanted to bring up, and I know we're probably getting short on time, but tell us about, I know y'all, we just had the statewide agritourism convention here in Raleigh, I think, and they did a tour. A lot of farms in Wake County was a part of that tour. I think y'all are members and maybe spoke at that. Tell everybody a little bit about that and why it's important to be a part of that, too.
So back during the summer, I know the ag tourism group, they came out to our farm and we showed our operation off to different ones from across the state and even multiple states that were there. Showed them what we were doing, how we were doing it, and how we've expanded off with different things and different aspects that are there. Even when we go off to those conferences for strawberry conventions or anything, we're seeing these other farms, seeing what they're doing, and we look around and saying, I would definitely not do that. Or, I like that idea, but it needs to be changed a little bit, make it a little bit safer. We got a question up here, I see.
Kind of related to that, what are your primary means of marketing in that regard? I saw your name, obviously, on your strawberry buckets and so forth, but anything other than word of mouth?
So a lot of it is word of mouth. In the past, my dad has done a roadside bulletin, what do you call those things? The billboards and things. Didn't really do a whole lot. We've done commercials with WRAL, just little tidbit things there for strawberry season and all. A lot of it is just the little bit of word of mouth and social media stuff that you put out there, which we're not very good at it right now, but we need to get better at it. The more you post on there and keep information coming out to them and the public being able to see it, the more likely they are for it to keep popping up in their feed and then get them to come back out again later on. Yeah. We're
getting down to the last couple of minutes, so any questions? Are y'all going to be here for a little bit after this? Yep. They're going to be here till lunch. Will be great. So if you don't want to ask in this setting, they'll be here through lunch for you to talk to them one-on-one. I know this is getting ready to be a very busy season coming up for y'all right now, and strawberry protection with these cold temperatures at night and trying to protect those berries so that you have something to sell to the public to do that. And so there's a lot that goes into frost protection in strawberries and our farmers and do that. So any other questions? If not, I'm gonna let them step down. I see one there. We got one more, and then we'll wrap up.
Thanks, y'all. I have a question related to how are you creating longer-term connection for folks who are visiting so that, you know, they're supporting their local food system, they're connecting with your farm, but other farms, and it's not just like a one-off visit to pick strawberries that they put on Instagram. Like how that's a lot of work, but like how are you creating that longevity of people connecting to your farm?
So a lot of with our farm is not so much how, I don't know what exactly we're doing to keep them coming back, but it's almost turned into a family tradition where they came out when we were doing strawberries in the past, before pumpkins ever were there, picking strawberries. They got the cute pictures and everything. They got to share with their family and do that kind of stuff. And every year they start coming back to get that same picture, that update and things, almost as if you're taking and marking off how tall that kid is every year. But it's just pictures there at the farm. It just turns into that family tradition, honestly.
We also try to put in something new every year to bring people back. We also do a craft day during the strawberry season where people in the neighborhood and all, they make crafts. They cannot buy nothing and resell it there. And that's one thing we marketed, you know, for the whole neighborhood to take advantage of all people.
Any others? All right. I'm going to have them step down, but please thank them for taking their time to come here today and give us this information. So thank you, Danny and Justin both. So thank y'all so much. Yeah, good. All right. I think we're still on good timing, so thank you. I'm going to put the clicker here, Nancy, for y'all to work that. All right. Next on the agenda, integrating ag strategies into the Wake One Water Plan. Wake County is working alongside the community to develop a countywide One Water Plan. This is a comprehensive, long-term approach to water management. We have Nancy Daly, our Water Resources Program Manager here with Environmental Services. She's here to gather your input on how to best incorporate agriculture strategies into this plan. She did hand those out, so they should be on your table. If you need help with that, please let us know. This is the One Water plan that's on white paper on that. We do need to get this filled out and returned to Nancy and those guys. We're going to have people in our staff going through and picking those out. I know it's a lot of surveys today, but as I try to talk to our ag community at different events, if you don't tell us what's going on, we don't know how to help you. And so that's why this is important. We are asking for your feedback. Please give that to us so we know what tools we need to give you, what information, and how we can help you with this. And water is being one of them, probably one of the most important things in agriculture operations, and having a safe, reliable source of water. I know that Strawberry and Page Farms tells you without water, their operation is gone, and having a safe, reliable source for their crops. So please help me join and welcome Nancy to come on up and start with this program. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for having us here today. Wake Soil and Water is one of our strongest partners in moving forward water quality projects in the county, and we're very grateful for the partnership and grateful to be here today. So as Teresa said, today we're just going to provide a brief overview of the Wake One Water Plan, and then we really want to use this time to seek your feedback on strategies. So we did try to hit everybody at the break and make sure everybody has a copy of the survey, but if you don't have a copy, just raise your hand and we'll make sure that you get a copy of the survey. So I'm going to provide just a few introductory comments and overview of the plan, and I'm going to hand it off to our project team to kind of dive a little deeper. So for those that don't know, the Wake One Water Plan is currently in development with the county. This is, as you heard today, Wake County is continuing to grow at an amazing pace, and, we want to make sure that we have the water to support the agricultural community, businesses, residents, and that we protect the natural resources that really contributes to the quality of life that we enjoy in Wake County. And that doesn't happen on its own. We need to be proactive. And so with the population growth and the increasing water demands, increasing, weather extremes, we really need to take a proactive approach and think differently about how we're managing water. And so we need to be prepared for the future water quality and water quantity challenges that are ahead of us. So with this in mind, in 2022, Wake County initiated the Wake One Water Plan. This is a 50-year plan, again, to make sure that we have clean and safe water to support Wake County and the population for the next 50 years. This plan is being developed very much in alignment with the county's comprehensive plan, Plan Wake, and I'm sure many of you have worked with, are familiar with Plan Wake and speaking with the planners that are here today. But we want to, as you're aware, part of that plan is making sure that we keep those rural and agricultural areas of the county in agricultural land, and then we kind of focus development in those walkable centers and developed areas. So with this plan, we want to think how we can work with that and develop strategies appropriate for agriculture, for the urban centers, and the other areas of the county. Oops. Okay. So as I mentioned, this just kind of reiterates how, our goals with One Water very much align with the goals for Plan Wake to be inclusive and equitable, healthy and active, sustainable. So they go hand in hand. And so another kind of large goal of the One Water Plan is just countywide increase everyone's awareness of the value of water. Make sure that we're maximizing the value of water. This group, beyond all others, I think probably recognizes the value of water. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that with you, but, a lot of the population takes that for granted. Early in the process, we spent a lot of time with our partners to develop the vision and goals associated with the One Water Plan. And so this just kind of highlights some of the big picture overarching goals that we have for the plan. So partnerships is a big part of this. And so partnerships with Wake Soil and Water, with our agricultural community, is going to be a big part of making this plan a success. You know, as I mentioned, and you are very aware, increasing storm intensities, we need to be resilient and we need to be prepared to adapt and respond. Again, raising awareness and community awareness of the value of water, making sure we're maximizing that value, and then just making sure that everybody has access to a clean and safe water supply. That doesn't happen on its own. We've got to work together and build partnerships to make sure that happens. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie McDermott. She's our project manager. She's with Tetra Tech, and they are leading the effort on this for the county. And so, Stephanie, thank you, and then we will pass it off to after Stephanie as well.
All right, thank you. And so, as Nancy mentioned, this process started in 2022 with a vision and goal setting exercise. That process included very broad stakeholder input, including members of the agricultural community, as well as representatives from the Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as others. Then last year, we moved into what we call our technical assessment phase. And in this part of the project, we are looking at all the different aspects of water. What are the current and existing kind of programs and data, as well as the challenges and obstacles that they're going to face in the future. Also at this phase, we developed some computer models to look at how all these different aspects of water interact with one another to both understand our current conditions as well as what we're going to see into the future. And from those technical assessments, we developed strategies that are forward-looking, that will be integrated into the plan. But these are in the draft phase at the moment, and so now we are here at the stakeholder input phase. And so we want to take this opportunity to present to you the strategies that we are working on, get your input, and then refine those to incorporate in the development of the One Water Plan, which will occur over the summer. I want to highlight a couple of additional opportunities for input. We will be releasing a public survey in April that is going to include different questions than what you're answering today that are going to relate to all aspects of water. So water supply, wastewater treatment, stormwater, flood resilience, nutrient pollution. So we really encourage everyone to be on the lookout for that survey from the county's social media. It will be posted in public buildings. It will be available on the website, and so please be on the lookout for that. And then once the draft plan is developed and released in the fall, there will be a public comment period where you can provide additional input on the contents of the plan itself. And so this slide just emphasizes what the different technical areas are that we looked at. Not going to spend too much time here since I mentioned some of these on the previous slide, but for the agricultural community, a lot of these are also relevant to you. As residents of Wake County, we all need water. Water is essential for life as well as our business. And so considerations of water supply, wastewater treatment, flood resilience, stormwater management touch us all. There we go. So looking at the model and some of the changes that we're going to see here in Wake County over the next 50 years, Wake County, as you all know, is growing rapidly. And in addition to that, we are seeing changing climate conditions. And so in terms of the impacts of that future, one, we're seeing warmer temperatures. And so you may not immediately see the connection to water, but that leads to additional evaporation off of our water reservoirs. That also means that the atmosphere can hold more water, which contributes to these extreme storms that we have started to see and will continue to see. And what our models show is that those are going to become both more frequent as well as more extreme. And so what that means when that water then reaches the ground is we have more stormwater runoff. So we have more water flowing off of both our urban areas as well as our agricultural land. But the growth of urban areas in Wake County is going to amplify, is going to increase those impacts. And so that emphasizes the importance of both kind of sustainable agricultural practices as well as the preservation of our farmlands. And then adding to that, we're going to see increased pollutants, particularly from our highly urban areas. And because of the increased development, the addition of these hard surfaces like concrete, we're also seeing a reduction in the amount of water that's reaching our groundwater aquifers, which is where wells draw from. And so at this point, I'm going to hand off the presentation to Bobby Tucker, who is a member of our team as well as a farmer, and so he will be guiding you through the rest of the presentation, including the survey.
Uh-oh. Well, I don't always know what I'm going to say when I get up here in front of folks, which makes it interesting for me, not so much for you all. She gave a little context, and I just kind of have to personalize this with respect to the topic today. I'm up here as the water nerd to talk about these things and work on this One Water plan, but I have been farming pretty much my entire adult life. We're in about year 20. And got through that, about year 5, we were hitting it hard, vegetables, pigs, working too much, too busy, probably not making good decisions for the future. And around year 5, we sort of discovered a holistic management framework. I don't know who familiar with that, developed by Alan Savory, but it's really was acknowledging the complexity of farming and agriculture and natural resource management and developing tools for preserving that, sustaining farmers. Now, I bring that up just because, also working in the water sector, agriculture and solutions to dealing with pollution have been very sort of linear and reductionist in approach. It certainly doesn't acknowledge the role that agriculture and farming plays in actually the solution to water management problems, but it is bringing the right approach to dealing with solutions. It's not just about regulations and dealing with end-of-pipe, end-of-source treatment, but really thinking about the financial, the social benefits and inputs of the community, as well as really understanding the role of working with ecosystem processes. So for me at that year 5 in studying holistic management, I had to learn to work with ecosystem processes because I wasn't meeting the goals I set out to, and use that to become more profitable. I had to learn to listen to my wife more, understand less is more on how we go about it. You can't just hammer on through it all the time. So with that being said, I'm just going to jump into sort of how I would connect some of the One Water strategies to some of the goals and benefits to agriculture. So, like I said, instead of just sort of dealing with pollution prevention and saying, all right, well, there's this much coming off of farmlands, we need to reduce it by this amount. On one hand, nutrients are considered a pollutant. With this demographic, you probably see it as a resource, as an input to be reclaimed. So how do we sort of shift from managing our land, looking at soil health in a kind of a holistic way, acknowledging the role of biological health, improving, the mineralization and natural nutrient cycling on our property, how that relates to effective water cycles, maintaining good ground cover, and all of that, the indirect benefit of that ultimately leads to both improved water quality, and when done right, it leads to a higher net profit. It's reduced input cost, and I've learned that firsthand. Talking about groundwater, you all know. We're in fracture country, right? We don't get our ground from an aquifer that we can easily quantify and know how much is there. Groundwater is very precious. It takes a long time to recharge from surface infiltration. So how do we sort of plan as a community to make sure that there are proper groundwater resources for our farmer? And maybe you've experienced it firsthand, or you have neighbors or other friends that have have had wells go dry with the encroachment of a nearby subdivision or industry or something like that, because we just don't really always know how much water is in that fracture or diabase dike. Now, there is more work being done in the county with the USGS, North Carolina Geological Survey, with support from the county to try to quantify that, but it's still kind of a big unknown. So this is really important, and we want to make sure that, and farmers get it, that that good water is left for our farm resources while we have the economy of scale to treat and provide surface water for our residential and other uses. Sustainable development practices. How do we possibly incorporate different planning and zoning and development patterns through conservation development that is a little bit more conducive to protecting existing farmlands, while as maybe also creating the opportunity to integrate smaller farming systems into development through cluster-type models. There is really a way to integrate different types of agricultural systems with different land use densities. We really ought to be having intensive vegetable farms in our urban areas that need a lot of nutrients, they need a lot of labor, they have short shelf lives in terms of their product. That meshes up very well with the so-called, I guess, outputs or embedded attributes of an urban area. All the way, let's chase that out to our rural fringes, right? That's where we kind of need to maintain ecological benefits, moving more towards our ranching, our forestry, our perennial systems. And then somewhere in between is, all right, how are we pulling out nutrients from our urban areas and getting that out for our staple crops? So anyway, that's another interesting topic to explore more of. And then really, how do we approach this from the other angle? Because One Water is saying, hey, we need farms. We're not going to meet One Water goals if we develop the county. We have to keep farms viable in existence. And that is not an easy topic. There's a lot of ideas that, we're talking about today. But what we're trying to do here is, here's a sector that's never really been, and I'm talking about the watershed management one, that's never really been there to say, all right, how do we really help the farm? What other tools and resources can we throw at that? So expanding markets, both retail and wholesale, to create a better price point for our farmers. And then at the same time, how do we reduce this sort of double loading, right? The current paradigm is we're bringing in all this food into our urban areas. That goes, through our wastewater systems. It's treated to some standard. Most of that nutrients is then dumped back out into our surface waters. And likewise, we're importing feed and fertilizer to our agricultural systems, and there's not a lot of connection there. So how do we create more food, get it back into our local communities that's produced locally, while at the same time recovering the nutrients and waste streams and getting that back into our farming systems so we can reduce costs? I know y'all have seen the cost of fertilizer go up. It is no joke. So that's a bigger, complex topic, but that's something that we geek out on in this One Water world. So now, I know y'all gotta have another survey to do, but I'm gonna kind of walk you through these questions. They are very important for us, just trying to figure out what does the community, what do you all as stakeholders care about? What is your input? What ideas do you have? Because we're really at the beginning of this engagement process. There's a hard copy in front of you, but here's also a link to others either joining virtually or want to access it from a phone, that we can do that as well. All right, so first one, and we're just talking about environmental benefits here. What are you most interested in? Are we talking about enhancing, creating habitat, wildlife diversity on your farm? For me, that's a particularly important one for the management decisions that we make. Is it about improving water quality, both on the farm or as it relates to downstream impacts, reducing on-site erosion? Are you really focused on building soil health, not just physical and chemical, but understanding the role of biology? Protecting your riparian areas and other water quality features, and then just overall reducing sediment and nutrient losses. Two of those seem redundant now looking at it, but
if you can fill that out the best you can and rank them 1 to 5. All right. And you know, y'all have time to fill this out later. I'm going to go through this just for sakeness of time, but don't feel like I'm rushing through here. So now, you know, these practices right here, these are various conservation practices that were identified. There are others. Feel free to add those in. And these may not apply to you all based on what ag enterprises you're involved in. So select all these that apply. So you've got compost and biological soil amendments, use of cover crops, managed grazing, and by that sort of are you rotating based on a targeted rest period or a specific grazing density that you're trying to obtain to achieve some sort of land treatment? Are you implementing a management plan for application of pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer, or manures? Using no-till cropping, protecting riparian borders on your or bordering the property, implementing stream exclusion, and then, you know, with that, putting in different watering systems for your livestock. Or I think something that's getting a little bit more advanced would be looking at agroforestry systems, moving things into more of that savanna system. And there's a lot of different types of agroforestry, but bringing trees into open pastures, for instance, or making decisions to thin woodland into more of a silvopasture. And, you know, from the water end of things, achieving that sort of savanna, scrubland, mixed system, tall grass, prairie meadow, that has a lot of the same hydrologic benefits as mature forest in a lot of instances. So it's a good land cover to achieve for a lot of benefits, as well as a lot of photosynthetic potential moving through that system that you can put into an animal or benefit wildlife. All right, well, I think that was a good enough time. All right, so of those practices, are there some there that you would like to implement, have been interested in, but haven't been able to do so? What we're interested in knowing, what is kind of keeping you for that? What are some of the barriers? And you can select all these that apply. Don't have land or not willing to give up land for a dedicated practice. Are you limited on, you know, money, funding, / labor? The two of those kind of go hand in hand. Is there concerns about just the long-term maintenance requirements that's going to be involved with doing that? I know if you're excluding riparian areas and livestock don't have easy access to that anymore, you know, are you concerned about having to manage the invasive species that just kind of come up in areas, riparian areas that go unmanaged, for instance? Regulatory requirements, you know, kind of burdensome requirements that go with, you know, taking funding, for instance, to implement one of these, or just general technical knowledge or know-how. If there's something else we're missing, feel free to add that as well. All right, here's one that's going to have some open-ended input, and I would certainly, we'd take any volunteers to suggest something here, or you can write it in on that paper. But what can and we could say the One Water Plan, the county in general, to serve the farming community to implement these strategies and conservation practices? We would love to know. I'll move on. Does anyone have an idea that's been sitting in their mind this morning? Yes, sir.
I think some of the things that my wife and I experience is when you got neighboring properties that go in and they do some major land clearing for development for whatever reasons, they do not protect the runoff that develops, which causes it to come across your property and then starts to cause flooding issues and just a whole handful of other problems for their neighbors when they do all this land clearing. So maybe some regulations, better regulations to stop that type of event.
And this is associated with land development for transitioning land uses. Yeah. Yep, yep. Yeah, and unfortunately, even with the best of, or let's just say a properly permitted erosion control plan, there's still impacts. You know, there's still sediment loss. So that's a good point. But you know, the counties usually have the flexibility to administer, and I know Wake County does. They do your own erosion control permitting, right? Yep. Yeah. Well, that might be illegal. I mean, you know, if it's over an acre, technically, I don't know, the county might have a more stringent, but yeah, and that's where no one likes a snitch, but when it comes to protecting our public resources, I mean, you kind of have to let the regulatory agencies know about that if someone is clearing, and you don't always know what they're going to do with it. I mean, it could be for agricultural exemptions, but that's a good point. There was another hand, yes.
Okay, you say Wake County, but are you talking Wake County, or are you talking the ETJs that all these cities like Holly Springs, Apex control around them? And when they issue the permit under zoning for that development to form and to be, how can you find out? And you go to all the town meetings and they're flashing up their plans, but they're not giving you the erosion plan, that how it's going to be protected. They can give you the boundaries. They give you, if people are complaining about their boundaries and how the berms that they put around these places, but they don't give you an erosion plan. They tell you where the sewer is going to be in the sewer line, but they don't tell you what's going to happen during the plowing, their land moving equipment coming in.
And you want to see more transparency with the erosion control,
And
sediment management.
who has that? It's not Wake County giving that permit for that development. It's that ETJ town next to the development.
Yeah. No, understood. And I mean, what's missing, at least in Wake County, well, two things I want to say. One, there is, the One Water plan is collaborative. So they're working with these municipalities to talk about long-term water resource planning, particularly water and wastewater. But when it gets into some of the zoning, that's a little trickier, because those decisions are made, you know, at the municipal level entirely. What's I think lacking here in Wake County is what's needed, let's say, modifications to the conservation cluster development, so that developers are rewarded with higher density parcels, or achieving the same number of lots that are entitled by zoning, but minimizing the site impact and leaving a lot of natural area with, you know, preference is usually towards those water features. So if we can get more of that happening and fix that ordinance like others, I mean, I've seen Orange County, we do a lot of conservation cluster work over there. That's been successful, but that could go as a long way to sort of meet some of those benefits. But what you're saying, I understand. There's limited control that the county has. But thank you too for that input. Okay, what other conservation practices are you using or willing to use? If you can write that in. If you want to share that, if there's been a success story, or if someone has implemented something and not achieved the benefits they were hoping for, we would love to hear that. Huh? All right. Any volunteers mention anything? Certainly don't have to. All right. What are your major obstacles to marketing? All right, so this is, we talk about a whole value chain. We've got our resources. we've got our product quality, and we've got our marketing. Personally, I'm a wholesale farmer because I do not like the marketing aspect. And I know that that's, if you're going to go at it full time, you got to deal with it at some point. But, you know, I think there are ways that what we've not done enough of, we've got a lot of retail outlets, there's a lot of talk about that, but maybe what we're missing are more top-down, you know, localized wholesale opportunities for, you know, particularly commodity producers to sell into. But let's go through these real quick. Just cost competitiveness. If you're dealing in the commodity market, just having an unknown price point, dealing with out-of-state products, lack of consumer demand, that's a tough one. Just general logistics and delivery. And that obtaining or meeting certification requirements. I know for some markets to sell into, you've got to have like a food safety plan, for instance, and that can be a bit arduous. Sometimes it doesn't make sense what they want you to do, but is that a barrier? Seasonality limitations of local produce, overcoming sort of that lack of seasonality of your consumer versus what, you know, our climate is able to provide. Storage facilities and wholesale market access with reliable price points. And that was kind of the starting point there. That seems like that could be a game changer for helping keep some of the larger farms in play and not having to just roll the dice at auction. All right, well, let me move on. I know we were pressed for time, starting late. Unless there's any questions or comments on this, happy to entertain that. Cool. All right, which of these strategies do you support to protect farmland? You just need to select your top 3. A lot of these are being discussed today. Agricultural protection zoning, this has worked very successful, like even states like Maryland, to deal with a lot of the development encroachment out of D.C., Baltimore, for instance. Using the conservation or cluster development ordinance that I'd mentioned earlier. You know, this is a bit out of order, but like, let's say we've done a great job of putting in the entitlements to protect farmland and have those easements in place where land can't be converted to another land use. Well, we still got to figure out who's going to farm that in perpetuity, right? We need to, we can talk about the easements, and then we can talk about the economic viability of farmland and the training of new people to come in and occupy those professions. So creating better farm transition and farmer education incubation programs, and that kind of segues into land access. Farmland mitigation requirement, so if folks are developing in the county and putting in a development which was farm or forestry, do they need to pay into a mitigation bank that goes in to help purchase farmland easements or create other, let's say, economic investment programs for the agricultural community? And that, again, programs in general to enhance the economic viability, purchase of easements, right to farm ordinances. I think the state does a pretty good job of doing that, especially participation in the voluntary ag district, but does that need to be enhanced? Transfer of development rights kind of goes hand in hand with easements, and then expanding the transitional buffers just to segregate ag and other development areas so that there's more land that's protected and you're not being sort of infringed upon and avoiding some of those potential issues and complaints from new neighbors. And if there's anything else, please let us know. All right, what's being done in sort of the one water approach elsewhere in the county is saying, hey, so we're talking about nutrients, right, is kind of the main pollutant that we're dealing with as what our, Falls Lake, for instance, is impaired for. So when you look at the cost of nutrients, and all nutrients are created equal in terms of its impact to the environment, we tend to take that, again, that technocratic approach, and we're spending $500 or more easily per pound to kind of take a structural solution, right? Stormwater, BMP retrofits, treatment plant upgrades. These things are very, very costly. But when you look in the non-structural realm and you look at the agricultural community of what we can do, we're talking about orders of magnitude cheaper. Now, the win-win is that a lot of these practices actually contribute to a more profitable farm and reduced input costs, expanding ecosystem processes. So that's kind of the thing that we're seeing done elsewhere is can we move resources around? Can we take a municipality or, where they have control of an ETJ, and instead of spending money on the high-cost option to achieve some permit requirement of meeting these, not to get geeky here, but, the pollutant reduction targets, can we reinvest that in farmland practices? I mean, it's just a much better, much more cost-effective approach. So if you're not already, would you be willing to participate with a local public entity? That's an easy one. Yes or no or not sure. We're talking about this today. I don't need to kind of hammer this, but would you be are you aware of the Wake County's conservation easement program? And are you interested in participating? Wake, among a few other counties, was proactive in taking those rollback taxes from farms coming out of PUV and using that to directly buy farmland easements. Chatham County just now recently did that for some reason. I don't know why it took so long. It seems to make a lot of sense, but good for Wake on being proactive. So there's a link here if you want to know more about this easement program, but it seems like a great program to participate in. All right, I think I'm down to a few minutes. I can take a few questions if you all have them. We're over by 10 minutes, but do you have your hand up?
Yeah. I was just curious if you think there'll ever be another reservoir built in Wake or Johnson County.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you could have, I'm not qualified to answer that. Nancy? Yeah.
Well, just as part of this One Water plan, again, we're looking at all forms of water, so stormwater, groundwater, surface water, groundwater. And so we are looking at, the current water resources and the future demand. And we know, and with the growth that we have, we are going to need some new water supplies. And I will say our partners, the utilities, are actively working together as a regional partnership to plan so that they have plans in place so that we do have water in the future. So future reservoir, that is one of the options that's being considered, but they're looking at other strategies too. So I think right now they're kind of in the evaluation process to figure out what strategy makes best to meet some of these future water demands. And, that's on the public, the infrastructure side. I would say, one of the things we're trying to bring awareness to as part of this plan is that, we all have a role too. We need to rethink how we're conserving water and, we're looking at water reuse again, so we're more efficient and maximizing the value of the water that we do have, because we can't make more, right? So short answer is yes, we are going to need future, additional water supplies. Those are being evaluated right now. The partners are, well prepared to looking at those alternatives right now, but we all have a role to play in making sure we have that water for the future.
Yeah, just kind of, I would say the low-hanging fruit's not necessarily the expansion of water storage. It might just be more improving water management practices and, like Nancy said, using more fit-for-purpose strategies. Like we're talking about, we don't need to remove all these nutrients if we can just relocate them to a system that actually benefits them and can benefit from them. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to override you again and go back to the reservoir that the gentleman was asking about. When the committee and the group or whoever is looking for where a reservoir is going to be built, are they going to look at the developed communities or the farmland to build the reservoir? And we all know the answer to that. So we need to deter enough development for a water reservoir instead of taking our farms. There has been a proposal for one that's not far down the road from where I live that is mostly farmland.
Yeah.
So how do we oppose that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the Jordan Lake side of things, and I do know, but I can tell you that the resentment it lasts a long time. You get your land taken for a reservoir. But a very important point. Yes. He's telling me to stop. If there's one more
I think
question.
I think there's one more.
Yeah.
We'll do one more, and I'll
Yeah.
come on up, and so I'll be ready to go. One more question, and you're right. That's a difficult question, and I encourage you to be at the table to speak, to advocate for that not to happen. Okay.
This is more of a comment than a question. I know that a lot of people here, we briefly mentioned the ETJs, and I know that a lot of people are unaware of the fact that in the House right now, the House of Representatives, is a bill called HB 173 that you need to contact your local representative and let them know that we need to stop this ETJs. It's passed the first committee. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, but it does affect our lands, and it does affect our developments and how we protect the water, the soil quality, and the damage that is occurring from developments. So we need to stop the ETJs, and this bill is to stop it for a 3-year period of time and eventually abolish it completely, because lands is being misused. It was developed during the war time to take lands to protect our country. We're way past that, and now it's being used to take up lands that is not really appropriate for that law for the ETJs. So contact your House of Representatives and let them know that you are not in support, or whether you are, of the ETJs. That way we're protecting our farmland, we're protecting our public lands, our parks, our wildlife areas, everything that stands for holding our soils and our land and our water quality in place and protecting it for the future. So please do that. Get yourself educated on that.
Thank you. I think I found a person that's going to take my job as soon as I retire. So she said it the best, and just how I would say it. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your input.
Yeah, thank you. It's absolutely great. So. And y'all going to be around, right? They're going to stay around through lunch. Through lunch. Nancy and Tetra Tech will be around through lunch, so don't feel like they're going to scoot out without you talking to them and answering their questions. So next up, Jason, where are you at? There he is, the man of the hour. We've got Jason Page with Jason R. Page Law Offices. That's right. His presentations have always been the most popular. Jason, I have a story to tell you. I tell you in front of everybody. I was at a meeting Monday night, and they came up to me and said, can you get me in touch with Jason Page? I need to talk with him. So I hope you brought some cards, because I've got somebody ready to call you this week that needs your help desperately. So I always say this for him, and he'll have it in his presentation too. He's not here to offer legal advice, but he's definitely going to be sharing valuable insights, issues, risks that impact your farm. This morning session, just so y'all know, understand, he's going to have an afternoon session too after lunch as a breakout separate. So the morning session is part one of farm succession planning, focusing on key factors to consider in the process, okay? If that interests you enough, come back to his breakout session in the afternoon, part 2, where he'll dig in and explore practical tools that can help you protect your property, okay? This is very important stuff that he's going to talk about. I've been doing this 20 years too, and Jason's been doing it a long time. And I think it's even more important now. I've had so many people that's reached out to Jason recently within the last year to get his help. Families are dealing with situations that they've never had to deal with before, and they don't know how to navigate it too. So please take this seriously. Listen to this information. It is complicated, but he's here to break it down for you and answer your questions. And he's always a resource for you. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you for having me. I have been doing this for, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 years maybe. And things have changed in Wake County pretty dramatically even over that time. And now it's reaching out to other counties. I'm in Wilson County, and we're seeing some of the same things there that we saw here a while back. I'll get my... There's a clicker here. Oh, there you go. Gotcha. All right, so I'm going to talk about this morning some of the things that could get in the way. All the other stuff you're talking about here won't matter if you can't keep the property. And so there's a lot of things that can cause that problem. And like Teresa said, this is not specific to your facts. Change the facts a little bit and the outcome can be different. So y'all should all have someone to talk these things through with. You know, the title of this is Keeping the Farm. And I'm assuming for purposes here, we're identifying the goal of keeping the farm for at least another generation. And some people want to keep the land in the family for multiple generations, but that's a lot easier when your land's $7,000 an acre than it is when it's $150,000 an acre value. And so some people want to just plan for that, but then have an option to do something different. It's not as fun checking on your warm season grasses and the trees you planted if somebody's looking out over you from the fourth-story building, their apartment in the fourth-story building beside you. So may not even be feasible to keep land forever. And then a lot of you just want to get that step up in basis before you have to pay a lot of capital gains on it. But all of these are situations where you want to at least have the option of keeping it for one more generation. And depending on the specifics, your tools you use might be a little bit different. So what could get in the way? There's a lot of things that could get in the way, but long-term care cost is one. Exploitation and undue influence is a bigger problem than you might think. Surviving spouses changing what your plan is. Surviving spouses remarrying. Taxes, divorce, and beneficiaries that have different goals. So I'm going to run through some of the issues with each of these, and if you know, I can say with some confidence that these probably won't affect you, but you've got to decide if probably is good enough, or if you want to make sure. And if you see some of these that resonate with you, then you can come this afternoon and we'll talk about some specific ways to avoid some of these problems. Long-term care costs are going to get worse. We know right now there's about 2 million people in North Carolina that are over the age of 65. And then in 2040, it's projected to be 2.7 million people over the age of 65. And the percentage is going up as well, not just the total number. Right now, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services estimates that 70% of people over 65 will need some kind of long-term care. And in 2023, friends and family provided 18.4 billion hours of unpaid care. So if we fast forward 20 years, a lot of those people that are providing the care are now going to be over 65. And I'm not sure there's going to be the same number of people to provide that care, and they're probably not going to be able to. So when we look at the average costs, skilled nursing, this is throughout North Carolina, skilled nursing in a private room is about $10,000 a month on average. But remember, that's Wake and Mecklenburg, but it's also Jones and Gates. So if you want to go to a skilled nursing facility in Wake County, it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. A semi-private room, $8,800, assisted living, $6,300, and even at home health at 44 hours a week, the average was $5,720. So 10 years of that can add up pretty significantly. And in almost, well, not always, but most cases, your land that is not your primary residence is going to be a countable resource if you're trying to get some sort of needs-based assistance. And there's really only 3 ways to pay for this. You can get long-term care insurance, you can write a check, or you can get on Medicaid. So people come to me and they say, I don't want the nursing home to get my property. Well, they're not going to get your property, they're going to get your money. They're just not going to give you the service if you don't have the money. And so you're really talking about, how am I going to get qualified for Medicaid? And you're probably not if you own a farm that's worth, $10 million. That's not what Medicaid's for. All right, exploitation and undue influence is, the reason I say it's a worse problem than you might think is because we're getting older. And as we age, we have some things that can get in the way, and then the law's not real clear, or I guess it's clear, it's just not, doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's a whole lot of different types of capacity. One's to make a will. This is pretty low. You have to know, and this is 150-year-old language from court cases, but the natural objects of your bounty. So you have to know who your kids are, who your family is, know what kind of property you have, understand that you're giving it to somebody and how it's going to impact your estate. That's a fairly low standard. Then you got contracts, deeds, trusts. That's pretty vague there. Understand the nature of the act, its scope and effects, or its natural consequences. All right, now we've got, how about powers of attorney? You can do a lot of things with powers of attorney. Well, we don't really know. We think it's probably contractual capacity for a general power of attorney. We know that for healthcare power of attorney, as long as you can make healthcare decisions now, you can decide who can make them for you later. But then the definition of incompetency is lacks the ability to make or communicate important decisions. So there's a lot of overlap there. And so someone might have capacity to do one thing and not have capacity to do the other. And it's hard to even get an opinion about whether someone has capacity because that's a mixed legal and medical question. Then we're looking at factors for undue influence. So after, grandma changes her will and leaves everything to the one cousin who lives next door, everyone is going to look and see, well, how about her age and mental weakness and physical weakness? Did that affect it? How about, was she living with someone and subject to their constant supervision? Did others have the ability to see the person? Is the will different from a prior will? Does it go to non-relatives? Does it disinherit natural heirs? So all these things are circumstantial, but they build up to where even if they don't apply, someone can allege that they apply. So making things clear before these could apply is important. And then the beneficiary procured its execution. So here's where I wanted to get to, and I talked about capacity a minute ago, but crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence is something I see a lot about. So crystallized intelligence is accumulated knowledge, skills, and experiences gained throughout life. So that just keeps going. You get more wisdom as you age. Fluid intelligence is the ability to solve problems and make solutions without the benefit of that knowledge and skill. It's So I'll be 52 in a few weeks, and I'm somewhere in the middle here. But my kids who are in their 20s can get a new phone and figure out how to use it in about 10 minutes. My dad, who's 83, asked me to connect his phone to the internet every time I go to his house. I've been using Zoom for 5 years now, and I've never had a 30-year-old tell me, I don't think this software works. I've never had a 30-year-old tell me I can't figure out how to use DocuSign. But a 75-year-old struggles with that. And that's the same reason that 20 years ago I had people come in and tell me, I think I won the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes. Well, those same things apply when, if we go back to, I won't go back now, but some of those undue influence factors, it's easier to convince someone that your other 4 kids don't care anything about you, it's just me. And it's a bigger problem as we age, and the older you get, the more that gap goes between the crystallized intelligence and the fluid intelligence, so it's harder to recognize that you're being scammed. Again, that's a hard one to fix unless you do the planning early. But it is something that we address all the time. All right, surviving spouses can change the plan or remarry, and everything goes out the window. So the survivor can make a new will or trust. Y'all can plan together and everybody in agreement for 40 years, and then you pass away and your spouse gets influenced by someone to change it. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you make that plan early. Divorce. So second marriages end faster than first marriages, or more, I guess a higher percentage of second marriages end than first marriages. So divorce can affect things. A new spouse's long-term care, that's something people don't realize a lot. Your spouse died and you remarried 3 years later to someone in your Sunday school class who was also going through the same thing. And you've got a farm that's now worth $10 million and they have $32 in a bank account and a car. And when they need to go into nursing home, your assets count for Medicaid purposes. And it doesn't matter if you have a premarital agreement, that nursing home and Medicaid are not parties to that agreement. They're not going to qualify. They could leave property to the new spouse. That happens more than you would think as well. And the survivor could die before the new spouse, and you could leave the plan exactly like it was, but there's no premarital agreement, and so husband dies, leaves the farm to wife remarries, and she dies, leaving everything to the kids. But now the farm used to be a 100-acre farm, and now it's worth $15 million. Well, the surviving spouse has a claim for an elective share unless that claim's been waived. So you have to think through all those. We see this often in a will of trust. It just says everything to my spouse if living, otherwise to my children or to my descendants per stirpe. So most of the time all the kids survive, not always, but per stirpe just means the grandchildren would step in if the child predeceases you. In intestacy, which these laws, the Intestate Succession Act was drafted in 1950, or it was approved in 1959. And I've never had anybody come in and say, I would really like to leave a third to my spouse and then divide the other 2/3 between my children. But that's what the default is for real estate. With one child, it's 50-50. And if no children, it's all to the spouse unless your parents are living. And if your parents are living, it goes 50% to your spouse and 50% to your parents. So those are pretty common. But then in second marriages, everybody wants to do the same thing. We'll leave it to my spouse if living, and then to her 2 kids and my 2 kids equally. And as I said, that's probably going to work, but there's a large percentage of people who sit in my office and say they're going to do that, and then 10 years later come back, the survivor says, no, I want to change it now. And I won't change that unless it was agreed beforehand that the survivor can change it, but somebody will. So that's you got to evaluate that risk and then see what to do about it. And as the stakes get higher, it's more important to do something about it. Our elective share, on the first day you get married, your spouse is entitled to 15% of your total net assets, no matter who you leave them to. After 5 years, it's 25%. After 10 years, it's 1/3. And after 15 years, it's 50%. So your $15 million farm that you leave to your children, and you were married for 5 years to your second spouse, they're now going to ask for, what's that, $3.75 million? I mean, maybe not, but their kids are going to be asking them to ask for that. All right, then as the values of property go up, the taxes are a lot more important. So there's 3 transfer taxes we deal with: the gift tax, the estate tax, and the generation skipping transfer tax. We have to figure out what the taxable amount of your estate is, and that's your gross estate is the value at death of all your property, real and personal, tangible and intangible, anywhere in the world. So anything you own or have a incident of ownership, so life insurance proceeds would count. Property you have in another country would count. So then we have to take whatever your deductions are. The deductions are going to be minimal in most cases for a large estate. And then we add your reportable gifts. So if right now the annual exclusion is $19,000 per person. So if you give more than $19,000, you're supposed to tell the IRS about it, file a gift tax return, and that comes off of your lifetime exclusion. So at death, we figure out what the value of your taxable estate is, and then we add your reportable gifts, and then we subtract the exemption. And anything above that, it's 40% of everything above $1 million of taxable estate. But right now, we have a credit of $14 million, 13.99 this year, per person. And the way they calculate that under the 2017 tax laws is it's $10 million in 2010 adjusted for inflation. And unless extended, that's going to be reduced to 5 in 2026. And we think it's going to be extended, but who knows? Crazy things happen every day now. And so we don't know. But it's pretty much been promised that this will be extended. We don't know what that will look like, but nothing's permanent. So we don't ever know what will happen in the future. We can say that I don't think the estate tax exemption's ever gone down. But there's a lot of things that have happened that have never happened before in the last few years. So we don't know. One thing that you probably know is that you can leave your spouse as much as you want to. So there's really never a reason to pay estate tax when the first spouse dies, as long as your spouse is a U.S. citizen. You can also leave charities an unlimited amount. And you can port over that unused exemption. So one spouse could die today, and you have $13.99 million. You can leave everything to the survivor, and if you file the right paperwork, you can port over that $13.99 million. So the survivor will have whatever the exemption is at your death plus the $13.99. But generation skipping transfer tax is not portable. So the impact of that is going to be on your children, not on you. And then divorce is also always a problem. Marital property is property acquired during the marriage unless it's separate. Separate property is property acquired before marriage or by gift or inheritance. And we're usually thinking about this for children. Marital property is subject to equal distribution, so you don't want to leave your child something that becomes marital and then the spouse leaves. But marital property can become, separate property can become marital property. So there's a presumption of a marital gift if you put your spouse's name on property. And there's good reasons to do that. If I inherit real estate and it's just in my name, I'm very likely to retitle that in my name and my wife's name to create a tenancy by the entirety. Then my creditors can't get it. The creditors of my estate can't get it. It would go automatically to my wife at death. And that's good asset protection planning. It's good probate avoidance. It's often bad estate tax planning, and it's terrible divorce planning. But you don't do that when you're anticipating a divorce. You can also commingle property. Inherited property can then be used. So imagine your kid inherits a farm and then spends marital funds on that farm to build a $100,000 building, or does work to improve the value. So the increase in value of separate property is separate property if that increase is passive, but it's marital property if it's active. So you have to think through all that and how you leave the property to your children if you want to avoid that. So the impact of that is more important now than it's ever been, because if your kid gets divorced, and property is in forestry or agriculture, well, you're not going to get that valued at present use value for an equitable distribution case. And I've had this happen, not in Wake County, but in an adjoining county where a farmer got divorced and could not afford to keep any of his land because it was all marital property, and sold it all to developers. So the party who wants to keep it probably won't be able to afford it. And then the last thing is the beneficiaries have different goals. It's hard enough if you live 2 hours east of here and you've got one child that farms and one that doesn't, and you've got a 100-acre farm worth $700,000 or $500,000. It's hard enough to do the plan to keep it in the family then, but when you make that worth $10 million or $15 million, now it's almost impossible if they don't have the same goals. So you also can't make your children care. If you want to keep it in farming, you better make sure your kids want to keep it in farming too, or do something to permanently keep it there. One child may want to cash out, and the more kids you have, the more likely that is going to happen. And even if they all agree we ought to keep it in farming, they're still going to fight over who used the internet more or who hunted more or all kinds of things that they come up with. So you have to think about stuff like that. And same thing with like a beach house. If 4 kids inherit a beach house, there's always a dispute over something unless we have very thought out plan for that. And it just might not be feasible to keep your property. I mean, I've counseled a lot of people to think about, you've got 50 acres in Wake or Johnston County. Maybe it'd be better to have 500 acres somewhere a little bit further east. You could 1031 it into that. But those are common concerns there, and if you have any concerns about how they might affect you, then we'll talk about that this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. Since Jason is going to be here in the afternoon, I'm going to hold the questions to get us to lunch a little bit sooner. He's going to be here, like I said, breakout session this afternoon through that. So I'm just going to hold that for questions if that's okay. So I'm going to do an announcement right before lunch too, but if you have finished those One Water surveys, if you will pass those to the end of the table, we've got staff going around to pick those up, so please go ahead and pass that to the end. And so we can collect those, and our farmland preservation ones too. You can do it both at the same time. Hopefully you've had a chance to do them, but we still have time at lunch and this afternoon too. Colby, come on up here. And so I've asked Colby to come speak, and I'm going to introduce him in a second, but one of the things for myself and for the staff of Soil and Water that I have noticed over the last year before coming to Keeping the Farm is we've been out on a lot of calls for conservation work, folks that's interested in forest management plans or conservation easements. And what I realized was folks are not managing their timber at all. And so, and no management is not good management at all. And so, and one of the things we talked about earlier with taxes, talking about present use value, is having that forest management plan and being able to manage that, because it is a natural resource. It is renewable if managed correctly. But I worked with the North Carolina Forest Service for years. They're here. I introduced them. They're back in the back corner. I can't tell you what a valuable resource they are to help you with your management things, because insects and disease can get in there. As you've seen from out in California and even in our western part of North Carolina now with the lean, wildfire is a great danger if it's not managed right. So I'm so glad Colby's here. I'm going to introduce him. Colby Lambert has been with the North Carolina Cooperative Extension. I've got for over 22 years now, Colby, including 8 of those as an area specialized agent in forestry. Colby is based in Harnett County. He serves 33 eastern North Carolina counties, providing forestry training and technical assistance to landowners just like yourself, okay? He is a certified forester through the Society of American Foresters and a North Carolina registered forester. He holds his leadership roles. One of my favorite, Colby, is the North Carolina Tree Farm Program. Colby's work with colleagues and agencies has helped improve and sustain thousands of acres of forest land across this state. So I think this is his first. His wife is the director of the Harnett Soil and Water, good friend of mine, Lynn, and so I'm very happy to have Colby, so please make him welcome. So thank you, Colby. Yep.
All right, thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I live in Harnett County, so I know exactly what y'all are going through, because we have in Harnett County what y'all went through, you know, in recent years, but we have a lot of those same issues now in the county I live in. So I want to talk about forest management plans and what are some important steps for landowners. So we're going to cover what a forest management plan is, why you need one, the types of plans that you can get, and then we're going to talk about those plan components and, you know, some of the things that you may see in those plans. How many of you own forest land? How many of you all have a management plan for that forest land? Good. How many do not have a management plan? We have a few out here, so that's good. But management plan defined is a plan that describes the current state of your forest or your property, and then it highlights or lays out steps that you need to achieve the goals of your forest. So what is your ideal forest? What are you managing that forest for? So this plan is a working document that can help you to achieve what you want, the goals of your land. It lays out a logical sequence of the activities that you will need to do to get that desired, those desired objectives like timber, wildlife, water, beauty, a family legacy. In a lot of our landowner surveys that's done through the U.S. Forest Service, most of our property or forest landowners do not have timber as their number one objective. It's usually 8 or 9 down the list. Usually that number one objective is leaving a family legacy, which is why most of you all are here, I'm assuming, is to leave that family land on to the next generation. So a management plan is also required as a document for eligibility for certain financial assistance, like the PUV program, preferential tax treatment, sometimes for compliance with certification programs like the Tree Farm certification program, and even sometimes for state and federal environmental law requires that. So that's why you need a plan. That's what a plan is. So there's a few different types of plans. The first one of those is plans that qualify the property for program entry, tax reduction, or certification. And those are more comprehensive plans like a stewardship plan, a PUV tax plan through the Forest Service or consulting forester, or a tree farm plan through the North Carolina Tree Farm program. There's also plans that can be for a specific goal of the landowner or to carry out a specific management task. Those are called prescription plans. Those are usually done through the Forest Service or your consultant forester, but a lot of times those plans can be done through the Forest Service at no fee. Both of these types of plans do outline specific landowner goals. And we'll talk about these qualifying management plans. Plan for present use tax program. You know, most of us foresters call them tax plans. That can be, and we'll talk about who you can get those plans through. A stewardship plan. This is a program that is through the it is handled through the North Carolina Forest Service, but it is a nationwide program, and it involves a specific type of plan that is more in depth than just your traditional PUV or tax plan. And it has, it addresses specific goals in regards to water quality, soil quality, wildlife habitat. And then the Tree Farm program has a certification program, and it is the certification is through the Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, or PEFC. The tree farm plan is very similar to the stewardship plan, and in a lot of cases, those plans can be interchanged with each other. But the tree farm program, and we'll talk about the specific step or requirements for those plans in a little bit. And then you also have some plans for federal programs like NRCS. You can get plans done through them. There's plans through the Turkey Federation, National Wildlife Turkey Federation, and also Quail Forever. And then the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission also has plans that can be specific to wildlife management. So an action plan that I talked about a minute ago is a single practice plan or a prescription plan that can be related to planting trees, some type of site preparation project that you want to do, specific wildlife management objective, or even through conservation plans through NRCS or soil and water. And in the case of this picture, this is a prescription plan that was done for a pre-commercial thinning. So those are the type of things that you're looking at with those particular plans. And then one thing I wanted to mention was the Wildlife Conservation Land Program. So this is a program, and feel free to talk to the Wildlife Resources Commission about this, but this is a program that is similar to the PUV program for forestry, but it is specifically for wildlife management. You have to have at least 20 contiguous acres, just like you do in forestry. I think the cap on it is 1,000 acres per county per landowner. If you have more acreage in another county, you can enroll that, but I think the cap is 1,000 acres per county. The qualifying criteria is protected species, which would be a threatened and endangered species, which would be fish or animals, not particularly plants. There's priority habitats that can be qualifying, and also wildlife reserve land, which is mainly for hunting or wildlife viewing or fishing, that sort of thing. So with this program, you don't have to have timber as the #1 production goal like you do in the regular forestry PUV. So for some landowners, this type of plan may be more in line with what they want to do, but it also gives them the opportunity to get their land in a deferment program. There is a little bit of difference in the amount of deferment value that you get there, but it's still an option for landowners that don't necessarily want to do timber production as their #1 goal. So why do you need a plan? You know, the main thing that a lot of people want a plan for is for the present use tax program. It is required to be in that program. It's also required because it shows sound management when you implement the plan. Sometimes it can be required for government programs. A lot of your cost share programs will require a management plan. For certification programs like we talked about. And then for some other things, you know, for environmental or legal reasons, you may need a plan. The main thing that I want to convey to landowners is it gives you a pathway. You know, it gives you a plan, just like you plan for leaving your farm, you know, through an estate plan. A forest management plan helps you to figure out what you've got and how to achieve your goals on your land. So let's look at some of those plan components. So for the present use tax program, there is 5 things that need to be in that plan, five components for that plan to meet the requirements for the PUV program. #1 is landowner objectives. You need to have your maps, whether you need to have an aerial photo, a stand map, soil map. We'll look at those. You need to have a forest description. In some cases, an inventory is not required, but you at least have to have a description of the stands that you have on the property at the present time. You also have to have some forest management prescriptions, because remember, for PUV, timber production is the primary goal. So you got to have some management prescriptions on there, harvest dates, methods, and regeneration strategies. A lot of times this is like a timeline of what you're going to do of those management activities. So your objectives, number one is your management landowner objectives. It can be different things: wildlife management, soil and water conservation, threatened and endangered species. But for the PUV program, what you must have is commercial timber production. So you need to think about that when you're doing the PUV plans. If you talk to the tax people, this is one thing they're going to ask you about. Where's the timeline on timber harvest, thinning, that sort of thing. So you got to have that commercial timber production. So I use our family farm as examples. Like I said, we live in northwestern Harnett County. This is my wife's family's farm. It's been in the family since the 1930s. Was originally a dairy farm. Now we have chicken houses. Right here, this farm beside of us is now 50 houses. So, we've got houses that are within throwing a baseball from our chicken houses. So, for us, being in the voluntary ag district is very important, but also, managing our land and managing that farm. This used to be a horse farm next to us. We didn't think about it being houses, but it is houses. So if you own a farm in Wake County or, where I'm at in Harnett County, you know how this goes. But these are the type of maps that you're going to need. It's always good to have these maps. It's a location map. This is an aerial photograph. It just shows where the property is located. Wake County is about, well, if I can get this thing to work, but Wake County is about 5 miles north of where our farm is. So we're right outside of Fuquay. But these are the types of maps. So the next map you need is an inventory map or a stand map, and then have those descriptions. So you can see here the different types of forest types we have on our property. So this is a starting point. This is what the forester will go out there. He'll do an inventory. He'll describe what you've got. So this helps you to know what you have out there. You may need an inventory to help establish your timber basis, and that's something that you'll need for taxes. And especially if you're going to pass it on to the next generation, they need to know what the timber basis is when that property is transferred over for tax purposes as well. But the other thing that's crucial for having this stand map with an inventory or description is to formulate your management prescriptions. You got to know what you have in order to figure out where you want to get it to as far as your management goes. So looking at the types of descriptions and, prescriptions, what you want to do with it. So there's several different things we can look at, and this is some of the things that you'll need to have in your management plan. So if it's a new forest, if you've just planted a forest, you may be looking at planting trees, you may be looking at natural regeneration, herbicide release. If you've just planted seedlings, you may need site preparation to get that new forest started, or maybe a pre-commercial thinning. Now, young forests are forests that are, they're between, say, 5 years old and 15 years old. You may be looking at thinning those forests. or doing prescribed burning. Could be some type of herbicide release. There's a number of things, some kind of wildlife improvement or pre-commercial thinning. Those are the types of things that you're looking at for these forests. And then we have our middle-aged forest. You know, this could be from year 15 to year 20 or 25. You may be looking at doing some pruning if you have a longleaf pine forest, some type of herbicide application for invasives. You may be doing a thinning and then doing some fertilization. So those are the kind of forest management practices that you would be doing for a middle-aged forest, and these are the kind of prescriptions that you need to have in that plan. And then our older forest, that's when we look at doing our final harvest. You know, there's several different harvest methods that you can use. Clear cut is one of those options. If you have a hardwood stand, you may be looking at a selective harvest, shelter wood harvest. You know, one thing that I've worked on a lot over the past 5 or 6 years is silvopastures. And so there's a different type of harvest system for silvopastures that we look at, you know, because we're looking at shade and how to get grass established under that shade so that we can graze livestock under it. So that's a whole different type of harvest system that you might be interested in as well. So these are all the things that you need to have in that management plan. And then one of the big things is having what I call a schedule, a harvest schedule or a management schedule that's going to lay out everything that you're going to do in that management plan for the next 5 or 10 years. You know, the main thing is with these management plans is you need to have them updated periodically. You know, things change. If you have a storm, you know, if you've had to cut early, or you know you're going to wait to cut because of markets. You know, the thing with a management plan is it's a fluid document. It's a working document. So you need to have that timetable, but understand that things may change. And that's the one thing that, you know, as a forester, I try to put in plans that I've written in the past, is have that flexibility with those plans. And, you know, with the tax office through the PUV, you know, they're going to look at those timetables, but, you know, they need to understand too that certain times you may not be able to do certain things. And for a lot of us that have a smaller tract of land, you know, if we have 20 acres to 50 acres, getting folks out there to thin or harvest can be tough. So it may take some time to get those things done. But you need to make sure that you have, you know, those timelines, and then actually have the type of regeneration you're going to do, whether it's a natural regeneration or whether it's planting of trees, because that shows that you're going to be continuing that forest on, and that's what they want to see at the tax office for PUV. So if you have a tree farm or a stewardship plan, these are the additional components that go into those plans, such as forest health considerations, soil conservation, water quality, threatened endangered species, invasive species management, and for tree farm, there's special sites, you know, so if you have a family cemetery, you know, that would be a special site. One of the things with tree farm is the forest of recognized importance. In North Carolina, our program, we don't have any forest of recognized importance, so it's not a, you know, you just need a statement in there for that. But also looking at recreation and aesthetics and wildlife management in those types of plans. So where do you go to get a plan? So this comes straight out of the Present Use Value Program Guide. So a plan can be prepared by an independent consulting forester, a registered forester, a forester with the North Carolina Forest Service. You can, as the property owner, write your own plan, but it has to it has to have all those components in it and be comparable to a plan written by a qualified forester. So a good way to get one done, see the folks in the back corner with the North Carolina Forest Service. They can do a forest management plan, forest stewardship plan. Those plans cost $5 per acre, and that's for the forested acres. So they're not going to charge you for all your property. They're just going to charge you $5 an acre for the forested property. They can also prepare prescription plans like a planting plan or a site prep plan, and those usually prescribed burning plan, those usually doesn't cost anything. So you can also use consulting foresters, and you can go to your local extension office or the Forest Service office. They maintain a list of registered foresters in the state of North Carolina that work in each county. So you can get those lists through them. There's also the Association of Consulting Foresters, and there's a directory that you can find ACF forester to do those as well. Now for consulting foresters, those fees are going to be based on time, acreage, and other factors that's in the plan. So they're probably going to cost a little more than $5 an acre, depending on the type of the type of plan that you want and the in-depthness of the plan. So if you need an inventory or an appraisal for timber basis or other things, your consulting foresters are going to be the folks that are going to be able to do that for you. And with that, I'll take any questions if we have any time.
Any questions? Are you going to be here for a little bit? Okay. He is going to be here for a little bit, so you can talk to him in person if there's no immediate questions right now. I'm going to try to get this wrapped up and get y'all to lunch too. So any immediate questions right now? Nope? All right. Well, please see Colby. Thank you. Very good information. So I think we got sold on. We're going to go ahead and do the raffle. Is that right? Okay. Get out your tickets for the rifle items. We've got 3 more. So get your tickets out. Make sure you got them ready. And then I'll give our closing remarks and lunch instructions, okay? And we've got one of the last ones. We'll do that big one last. And then if you win it, you may have to have somebody carry that out to your car for you, okay? But let's do the other 2 first. So get this one out here. Next one winning is 617. All right, come on over here. Yeah, let them bring it to you. Yeah. All right. 572. 572. Anybody? Let me see. I think we got a winner, but let me check. You got it? Okay, I see her back there. If you can take that. Okay, this is the last one, the heavy one. I think it's a tabletop gas grill. All right. Yeah, I know. I'm getting it right now, whoever this is. 476. 476. I see you. Right there, David. Look at you. I'm going to need to borrow this grill. I'm going to need to borrow it. So, good job, David. Yeah. And thank you to Agri-Supply, Triangle Land Conservancy, Wake County Farm Bureau. They donated these excellent door prizes for y'all. So each year, that's why you have to come back, because you don't know what we're going to have. So, but please turn in those surveys if you haven't yet. Please move those down. So this concludes the morning session, okay? So what's going to happen, I'm going to give you instructions. I'm going to give you lunch, okay? So after lunch, we're going to move into rotating breakout sessions, okay? I'm going to tell you what they are right now. We have 3 breakout sessions, okay? And you can choose that. You can only choose 2, okay? But you got 3 to go to, all right? So you're going to have part 2 with Jason Page, Farm Succession Planning, Practical Tools to Protect Your Property, okay? And room C, which will be right in here. It's usually a larger group, so we're going to give him this bigger area for that. We're going to have our soil and water staff, our federal partners, natural resource conservation staff. We have our ag agent with the Cooperative Extension Service, and other folks into our technical assistance and cost share opportunities from that. And so they're going to be in room A. So it'll be labeled on the room A. And then we're having our Farmland Preservation Coordinator, Lauren Hendrickson, and Triangle Land Conservancy. I know Leanne is there. Y'all have got to know her. If you don't, she's been here forever out of those. Hammerbacher with Triangle Land Conservancy, and they're going to be in room B, and they're going to be talking about all aspects of farmland preservation and answering your questions and giving you information with that, okay? Again, you can only choose two, so choose wisely in rotating. Those will be about an hour sessions, rotating for about an hour, okay? Hour each, okay? You're free to leave after those breakout sessions, okay? We will not reconvene in here. Again, complete those surveys. Please give us your input on future topics for this workshop for the afternoon. We have boxes outside that are marked for the surveys. Please leave your name tags in the boxes labeled name tags. We try to reuse those so we don't have to keep using paper to reuse those every single year, okay? Lunch instructions. We'll be going through the back doors that you see. We'll be lining up. Be respectful of folks older, to let them go first and have any kind of mobility issues. Please help them and get them through the line. I want to thank Catering by Design out of Raleigh for the delicious home-cooked meal that they're providing for you. So you'll go through the double doors, get your plate, go down the hallway, and back to your seat to eat, okay? If you need assistance with that, all of our staff is here. Please reach out to us. We'll be able to help you get your food and get you back to the table. With that, lunch instructions, if you had a dietary restriction and you prearranged that alternate meal, please see Winifred in the kitchen. She's back there waving her hand. She's got that safe meal for you. We have plenty of food, okay? You probably can go back again. So everybody, we got plenty of food. I know we're worried about numbers and if we had a lunch, but we have plenty of food. Everybody's welcome to stay and eat. I promise you, this food is delicious, okay? I've had it, all right? Before we break, we always like to do this. David Adams is our Associate Supervisor of the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District, a farm owner in Holly Springs, and he's going to provide our invocation before we eat. So, David.
Thank you, Teresa, and I hope each of you are enjoying today as much as I am. Believe it or not, this is my 20th workshop that I've attended. I started at the very beginning and wouldn't miss it for anything in the world, and every year I learn something, many things that I did not know. I know when we're back on our farms and we're facing all these challenges every day, forces that we feel are working against us, it can be a lonely place. But yet, this is one of my favorite days of the year because when we come together, we always leave more encouraged than when we came. And we don't feel so alone. And you're a great group of people, and I certainly appreciate you taking your time out to attend today. With that, may we go to the Lord in prayer. Merciful and loving God, Creator of the heavens and earth, we humbly come before you today as your people to give you thanks. We thank you for the very breath in our lungs on this beautiful day, a day that you have made and blessed us with. Lord, I thank you for every person and every agency represented in this room today who worked so tirelessly on our behalf in order for us to be better stewards of your resources. So God, I ask that you open our hearts and our minds to receive this wisdom today and in the days ahead so that we would make good decisions for you. For just as Christ said to his disciples, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. And Lord, I thank you for this great country. Please grant our elected officials wisdom to lead effectively and transform their hearts to work in unity as you call us to do. Lord, I ask that you protect the brave men and women in our military who so selflessly defend and sacrifice so much for our freedoms. And finally, Lord, I thank you for the food we are about to eat, for the hands that grew it, the hands that harvested it, and those that prepared it. And Lord, as we prepare to depart today, allow us to simply love others just as you have loved us. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
All right, we're ready. Everybody ready in the back? Okay. So, yep, they're ready. So please make your way down inside the double doors and get your food. So thank you all.